In a simple wooden house, two women were looking anxiously at the man lying on the bed. The man slowly opened his eyes, and what came into view were two nervous female faces, one big and one small. Facing these two unfamiliar faces, he opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, he was suddenly startled and memories flooded back like a tide. This man's name is Chun Dao. He was originally an ordinary person in Blue Star, China. After graduating from university, he has been working diligently. Due to years of working day and night without a break, Chun Dao suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart during one overtime job. Before he could react, he fell to the ground. When all his memories came back, Chun Dao realized that he had traveled through time like the protagonist in the novel. The body his soul is attached to now also happens to be named Chun Dao, an ordinary villager from Qinjia Village, Taiping County, Qingzhou, Xia State. The original owner of this body lost his father in his early years. There were three people in his family, namely his mother Li Ping, his sister Chun Fei, and him now. Seeing Chun Dao wake up, Li Ping held his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have agreed to let you go into the mountains with them." At this time, Chun Dao had already received all the memories of the original owner, so he naturally understood what Li Ping was referring to. Since his father passed away, Chun Dao, as the only male in the family, has become one of the main laborers. However, in recent years, frequent natural disasters and heavy taxes and levies by the government have made it difficult for the family to make ends meet with just a few acres of land. To make a living, Chun Dao decided to go hunting with the village hunters. Although he was hunting, he was only responsible for helping to transport the prey. As for the actual fighting, Chun Dao didn't have to personally participate. The hunters would share some of the prey with him afterward, which was barely enough to count as a job. At first, Li Ping was adamantly against him taking such a risk. The mountains were treacherous and unpredictable, and she was not willing to let the only remaining man in her family take such a risk. But seeing that the family was struggling to make ends meet, and Chun Dao had already made up his mind, Li Ping had no choice but to acquiesce. Who would have thought that this mission, which should not have been risky, would leave Chun Dao seriously injured? It turned out that on the way down the mountain, he accidentally fell and hit the back of his head on a protruding rock, and he was in a coma for several days. In the past few days, Li Ping and Chun Fei stayed by his bed day and night, their hearts full of prayers, hoping that he would wake up soon. It seemed as if the heavens were responding. Perhaps their prayers had worked, and Chun Dao, who had been in a coma for many days, finally woke up. He slowly looked around the wooden house and the mother and daughter dressed in coarse cloth, feeling a pang of sadness in his heart. The walls were made of wooden boards, and cold wind blew in through the gaps, making the house not much warmer than outside. If he had a choice, Chun Dao would not want to live in this strange and barren world. But now that things have come to this, he can only try his best to adapt. I wonder if the knowledge from my past life can make my life better in this world. He stared off into the distance, his mind wandering. In his previous life, he had read many time travel novels and couldn't help but wonder if he could achieve a comeback like the protagonists. However, he looked around at the empty house and temporarily gave up the idea. Not to mention whether one can accurately remember the knowledge from the previous life. Even if one can remember it, it will probably be useless for a while. Well, let's take it one step at a time. Chun Dao sighed softly. Not long after, Li Ping came over slowly, carrying a bowl of food. He looked down at the bowl, where a few beans and a few lumps of mushy paste floated. While it wasn't exactly appetizing, he knew it was a rare good meal. Normally, the family only ate bran. He took the bowl and swallowed the food mouthful by mouthful, forcing himself to swallow it. After swallowing the bowl of batter, he felt a little stronger. Just as he was about to hand the bowl back, there was a sudden knock on the door. Li Ping heard a familiar voice and hurried to open the door. "Sister-in-law." The door opened, and a cold wind rushed into the room. Three men came in and said to Li Ping with guilty looks on their faces, "We're sorry, we couldn't take good care of Xiao Dao." The people who came were the three hunters who had entered the mountains with Chun Dao before. The middle-aged man in the lead was named Chun Da, and the two people who accompanied him were Chun Si and Chun Jiang. Li Ping felt resentful about Chun Dao's coma, but she also understood that the three people had no ill intentions, so she did not blame them. Chun Da, with a simple and honest look, handed a piece of meat to Li Ping. Li Ping was stunned, and a hint of hesitation flashed in her eyes. Before she could speak, Chun had already stuffed the meat into her hands. "Take it, sister-in-law. This was originally meant for Xiao Dao. Then I'll take it. Li Ping took it with a hint of embarrassment. Come in and sit down. I'll pour you some water. Sister-in-law, there's no need to bother. We'll just go see Xiao Dao and leave. Chunda took Chen Si and Chen Jiang into the house. After entering the room, Chunda moved a chair and sat beside the bed. Looking guilty, Xiao Dao, I'm sorry. It's my fault that I couldn't take good care of you. Chen Si, who was standing beside him, also asked with concern, Xiao Dao, are you feeling better? Much better. Chen Dao chuckled softly. Uncle Chen, don't blame yourself. It was my own carelessness. It has nothing to do with you. Chen sighed. Fortunately, you are okay, otherwise I don't know how to face your late father. Chunda and Chen Dao's father, Chen Ping, had a very good relationship. Otherwise, Chunda would not have been willing to lend a hand and give Chen Dao the job that could be described as picking up meat for free. You know, these days everyone is hungry, let alone meat, so how could it be the turn of a young boy to share such a good thing? The three of them did not stay in the house for too long. After chatting with Chen Dao for a while, they said goodbye and left one after another. As soon as Chunda and the others left, a little head popped out from under the covers. It was Chun Fei. With sparkling eyes, she asked, Are we having meat tonight? Just at this moment, Li Ping came over, glanced at Chun Fei, and said angrily, You little girl, your mind is full of thoughts about eating meat. Chun Fei didn't care at all, but she was already looking forward to the dinner table in the evening. 3 days later, thanks to the meat sent by Chunda, Chen Dao's body finally recovered completely. However, although his body recovered, he still had no idea how to change the difficult living conditions at home. That day, he mustered up the energy to get out of bed, opened the door to the cold wind, and was immediately awakened by the coldness that hit his face. The yard was not big, and the wind was blowing outside. Chen Dao sat on the doorstep, staring ahead, racking his brains for ways to get rich. Cluck, cluck, cluck. A rooster's crow interrupted his thoughts as a hen passed by him. He looked closely, and suddenly a series of words appeared before his eyes. Gray feather chicken, characteristics, long growth period, low egg laying. Gray feather chicken advanced route 1. Mate with a red heart chicken, 50% chance of hatching a red feather chicken. Red feathered chicken features. Lays many eggs and has a longer growth period. Gray feathered chicken advancement route 2. Eat chicken heart grass daily for 3 consecutive days. There is an 80% chance of advancement to a white-feathered chicken. Characteristics of white-feathered chickens. Short growth period, high meat production. Chen Dao was stunned. Then his eyes flashed with unconcealable ecstasy. Just when Chen Dao was worried about his livelihood, his golden finger unexpectedly appeared. But this golden finger seemed not very powerful. Brother, Chun Fei came running over, pulling the door frame, and said, Close the door quickly. It's so cold. The house was not windproof to begin with, and it became even colder when Chen Dao opened the door. He held Chun Fei in his arms, then turned to Li Ping and asked, Mom, do you know about red heart chicken and chicken heart grass? Red heart chicken? Chicken heart grass. Li Ping frowned and thought for a moment, then shook her head and said, I've never heard of it. I've heard of chicken heart grass. Chun Fei suddenly spoke up in his arms. Chen Dao's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly asked, Xiao Fei, where did you hear that? Chun Fei frowned and thought for a long time before hesitatingly saying, I went to Chen Tian's house before, and I think I heard them mention it. Chen Dao naturally knew who Chen Tian was. He was the son of Hunter Chunda and one of Chen Fei's playmates. Mom, I'm going to Uncle Chen's. He stood up and walked out the door before he finished speaking. The cold wind bit his bones. Chen Dao wrapped himself tightly in his clothes and walked along the empty village road. All around him was silent. Although it had not snowed yet, the freezing cold still forced most villagers to stay indoors unless they had something important to do. This weather is so abnormal. He frowned as he walked. According to the original owner's memory, it should be August, but now it is freezing cold. Over the past few years, Qingzhou's weather has become increasingly erratic, with colder temperatures beginning in July and continuing unabated. These years of severe cold, coupled with exorbitant taxes, have left the people of Qingzhou struggling to make ends meet and filled with resentment. Chen Dao's home wasn't far away, less than a 2-minute walk away. He raised his hand and knocked on the door. Soon, footsteps were heard from inside, and a young face appeared behind the door. It was Chen Dao's 11-year-old son, Chen Tian. Chun Tai-Dan ushered Chun Dao into the house. Chun was sitting inside. Seeing him come in, he smiled and said, "Xiao Dao, how come you have time to come see Uncle Chun? Are you feeling better?" "Much better," Chun Dao replied, then got straight to the point. "Uncle Chun, I have a question for you. Have you heard of chicken heart grass?" "Chicken heart grass?" Chun thought for a moment, then nodded. "Of course I've heard of it." Chun Dao's eyes suddenly lit up, and he asked excitedly, "Uncle Chun, do you know where I can find chicken heart grass?" "I have it right here." Chun stood up and walked to a cabinet nearby, taking out a plant that looked like a weed. He handed it to Chun Dao and explained, "This is chicken heart grass. It has a hemostatic effect. We often use it to stop bleeding when hunting." Chun Dao took the herb and took a closer look. It was quite similar to the wild grass he had seen in his previous life, except for the slightly different leaf shape. He asked cautiously, "Uncle Chun, is this chicken heart grass expensive?" Chun nonchalantly stuffed the chicken heart grass into his hand and asked with concern, "There are plenty of these things on Kangmang Mountain. What do you want it for? Is someone at home injured?" "No one was hurt," Chun Dao said. "I have some use for them. I wonder if Uncle Chun has any more at home. Could you give me a few more?" Without asking any more questions, Chun Da grabbed a few stalks of chicken heart grass from the cabinet and stuffed them into Chun Dao's pockets. Chun Dao took the herbs and was about to leave when Chun Da called out, "Xiao Dao, since you're here, why don't you have a meal with your Uncle Chun before you leave?" "Uncle, no, I have things to do." Chun Dao quickly declined. Life was so tight these days, how could he afford to take and eat all that after saying goodbye? He hurried back home. At this time, Li Ping and Chun Fei were already resting on the bed. Chun Dao looked at the few stalks of chicken heart grass in his hand, and his heart was burning. If this chicken heart grass can really help the only gray-feathered chicken in the family successfully advance, then maybe it can really change their fate. I hope it works. He walked in the front yard and held out a piece of chicken heart grass in front of the gray-feathered hen. The hen seemed to smell the fragrance and immediately rushed over, pecking at the herb with its sharp beak. "There's hope." Chun Dao's eyes lit up, and he simply threw the whole stalk of chicken heart grass on the ground and let the hen peck at it. Soon, the whole stalk of chicken heart grass was eaten clean. The hen seemed not to be satisfied yet, staring at Chun Dao with bright eyes, as if to say, "Anything else?" Chun Dao naturally wouldn't feed a second plant. He simply sat on the threshold, his eyes fixed on the gray-feathered hen's transformation. "I hope she can really advance." He sighed softly. However, by the evening, he hadn't seen any noticeable changes, and he felt a little disappointed. The next morning, Chun Dao woke up early and immediately ran to the front yard to check on the hens. "There's a change." His eyes lit up. A few faint white feathers appeared on the gray hen's fluttering feathers. This change immediately made Chun Dao's face light up with unconcealable joy. Change means hope. This not only means that his golden finger does exist, but also shows that the chicken heart grass can really promote the gray-feathered chicken to advance into a white-feathered chicken. Although Chun Dao didn't know the specific performance of the white-feathered chickens, the fact that they grew meat quickly was enough to make him ecstatic. Thinking of this, he turned back into the house, took out another heart-shaped grass, threw it in the yard, and let the gray-feathered hen peck at it. After watching the hens finish eating the grass, Chun Dao walked into the kitchen and had breakfast with Li Ping and Chun Fei. Breakfast was still the familiar porridge, without even an egg. Chun Dao forced himself to finish a bowl, then looked up and asked, "Mom, how much money do we have left?" Li Ping was stunned for a moment, then didn't hide the fact. "There's still 183 won." Chun Dao remained silent. He knew his family was struggling financially, but he had never imagined they were this poor. "Mom, can you give me the money at home?" he asked tentatively. "I'm planning to do some business." Although Li Ping didn't know how to do business, she chose to trust her son. She stood up, took out a cloth bag from under the bed, and carefully handed it to Chun Dao. Chun Dao solemnly accepted the 183 copper coins, feeling a surge of emotion. Although Li Ping was a country woman, uneducated, her trust in him moved Chun Dao deeply. "Don't worry, Mother. I will never spend this money carelessly." He put the copper coins away, feeling the weight in his hand, weighing heavily on his heart. 2 days passed in a flash. One morning, before Chun Dao got up, he heard Li Ping scream from outside the yard. He immediately jumped out of bed and rushed out the door, only to see Li Ping standing in the yard in a daze, holding a handful of bran in her hand, her eyes fixed on the hen. Chun Dao followed his sight and saw that the originally gray hen had turned snow-white. Not only were its feathers as white as snow, but its body had also become more than a size larger. The gray feather hen in the past was pitifully thin, weighing only about 3 pounds, but Chun Dao took a quick look at the white feathered chicken in front of him and thought it must be as much as 6 pounds. Success, he exclaimed inwardly. 3 consecutive days of feeding the chicken heart grass had indeed enabled the gray-feathered chicken to complete its advancement. "Xiao Dao, come and see." Li Ping waved at her son as he arrived, a look of surprise and doubt on her face. "Is this chicken ours?" "Don't worry, Mom. This is the chicken from our family." Chun Dao responded with a smile. As a person who had experienced the advancement firsthand, he naturally knew what was going on. Chun Fei, who heard the noise, also ran out and shouted excitedly, "What a big chicken!" She ran to the white-feathered chicken with her short legs, not wanting to blink. Li Ping ignored Chun Fei's exclamation, but stared at Chun Dao and asked slowly, "Xiao Dao, did you do this?" "Don't worry, Mom. I used a special method to make the hen look like this. It's a chicken in our house." Li Ping finally felt relieved after hearing her son's explanation. But then, her expression tightened, and she leaned in and whispered, "Xiao Dao, you must never tell anyone about this." Although Li Ping was a peasant woman, she understood the principle that a man is innocent unless he possesses a treasure. If others knew about this, she was afraid that her whole family would be in trouble. "Don't worry, Mom. I won't tell anyone," Chun Dao said solemnly. He knew better than anyone how important the secret he held was. He couldn't let a single word of this leak out until he had the ability to protect himself. Li Ping turned back to the house, while Chun Dao continued to stare at the white-feathered chicken that had already completed its advancement. A string of words appeared before his eyes again. White-feathered chicken, features, short growth period, high meat production. Advanced Route 1. Crossbreeding a white-feathered chicken with a black-clawed chicken has a 60 chance of hatching a jade-feathered chicken. Jade-feathered chicken characteristics. Short growth period, strong fighting power. Advanced Route 2. Mash the heartgrass and sapban flowers into juice. Feed it for 3 consecutive days. There is a 90 chance that the white-feathered chicken will advance to a yellow-feathered chicken. Characteristics of yellow-feathered chickens. Short growth period, high meat production, and short egg-laying cycle. Can white-feathered chickens continue to advance? Chun Dao's eyes gleamed brightly, and an unconcealable smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Previously, he thought that this golden finger was useless, but now his mind has completely changed. If it can continuously provide advancement routes, does that mean he can cultivate a chicken that is stronger than a monster? From the original owner's memories, Chun Dao learned that warriors existed in this world. It was said that the top warriors could defeat 1,000 men at once, and no one could stop them. In this vast, mountainous region stretching for thousands of miles, countless monsters inhabit it, making it extremely dangerous. Even warriors dare not venture deep into it. Since monsters exist, if I can breed a fighting chicken that can rival them, then wouldn't that be? Chun Dao became more and more excited as he thought about it, but then he frowned. Although he knew that white-feathered chickens had 2 advancement routes, Chun Dao knew nothing about either the black-claw chicken or the sapban flower. It seemed that further advancement of the white-feathered chicken would not be easy for the time being. He shook his head and decided not to force it. Right now, improving the family's poverty was the most urgent task. After breakfast, Chun Dao walked out of the house and headed straight for Chun Da's home. As a hunter, Chun Da traded his game furs with the outside world year-round, and occasionally went to the county town to sell his goods. Chun Dao was planning to go with him to the county town. After hearing Chun Dao's intention, Chun Da was slightly startled and said, "County town? I happen to be going there today. Why, you want to go too?" "Uncle, I'll go with you." Chun Dao's eyes lit up. "Sure." Chun Da patted his shoulder. "Go back and get ready. We'll set off soon." Chapter 5. Going to the city as soon as Chun Dao got home, he didn't waste any time and immediately took action. He grabbed the white-feathered chicken, tied its legs with a rope, and then carefully placed it in a woven chicken coop. Afterwards, he pocketed all the copper coins in his home and rushed to the village entrance to meet up with Chun Da and his men. The village entrance was bustling with activity. Chun Da, Chun Si, and Chun Jiang, all carrying bows and arrows, stood beside the village's only donkey cart. Many villagers gathered around them. Whenever Chun Da was about to go to the county town, they would ask him to help buy some daily necessities, such as salt and sorghum flour. An old man carefully handed a copper coin to Chunda and told him to bring back half a pound of salt and 50 pounds of sorghum flour. Chunda took the copper coins and nodded earnestly in agreement. Villagers lined up one after another, handing him the money they had prepared. Some wanted to buy 20 pounds of noodles, others 50. Standing nearby, the village chief, Chun He, handed Chunda a list he had written earlier. He explained that Li Zheng, a village scholar, had compiled a list of supplies needed, and that Chunda could simply order them. Li Zheng, one of the few literate people in the village, had fled here in his youth and was now a teacher. Chunda took the list and put it away, assuring everyone that he would bring back the necessary items. After hearing this, the villagers gradually dispersed. Chunda turned around and saw Chun Dao, smiling and beckoning him to get in the car. Chun Si and Chun Jiang nodded to Chun Dao, and together they boarded the donkey cart and began their journey into the city. The cart slowly pulled out of the village and onto the official road. Soon, refugees began to appear along the roadside. Chun Jiang looked at these skinny, pale-faced people with dull eyes and couldn't help but sigh. Life is really tough these days. In the past, when they entered the city, they rarely saw refugees on the official roads, but now it has become the norm. This shows that many people have no way to survive and have been forced to leave their homes, hoping to find a way to make a living in the county town. This damn weather is terrible, Chun Si cursed, still holding the reins in his hand. Qingzhou used to be able to barely manage 2 good harvests, but in recent years, natural disasters have led to successive years of poor harvests. Coupled with heavy government taxes, many families simply can't make ends meet. The harvest from the fields is meager, and with taxes still to pay, it's hard to make ends meet. Many people have been forced to abandon their land and become refugees. Chen Dao's heart sank as he watched the refugees. They were as thin as dried wood, their cheeks sunken, their eyes hollow, and they walked the road like the walking dead. Only when their gaze fell on the donkey carts did they reveal a glimmer of hope, as if they were hoping for a meal. Alas, Chen sighed softly and looked away. He whispered, "Stop looking. Hurry up." He wasn't without sympathy, but if he offered even a little bit of charity at this moment, he feared they would be overrun. The people on the donkey cart might very well lose their lives. So he urged Chen Si to speed up. But even as we sped up our pace, we could still see a constant stream of refugees along the way. The long official road was almost completely occupied by these displaced people. Chen Dao's heart grew heavier. He witnessed a woman holding a child collapse, exhausted. The surrounding refugees immediately took on a strange look. In those eyes, hunger had already devoured their humanity. He had never before experienced the cannibalism scenes from history books so vividly. In his time on Blue Star, where had he ever witnessed such cruelty, this scene struck him deeply. He wanted to help the mother, but he knew he was powerless. At this moment, he couldn't even protect himself, let alone save others. "Xiao Dao, stop looking." Chunda patted his shoulder, his tone gentle but heavy. Then he asked, "What are you planning to do in the city this time?" Chun Dao came back to his senses and whispered, "I'm planning to sell the chicken at home." Chun subconsciously looked at the chicken coop at his feet. "Is this your chicken?" he asked, puzzled. He remembered the gray-feathered hens Chun Dao had originally owned as small, fluttery gray hens. But the one before him was pure white and considerably larger. It didn't look like the same hen at all. "That's the chicken, for sure." Chen Dao was a little surprised himself. "I don't know why it's suddenly changed recently. Its feathers have turned white, and it's gotten a lot bigger. This chicken is special." Chun Jiang couldn't help but sigh. In this world, most chickens are gray-feathered, small, and lacking in meat. But Chen Dao's chicken is incredibly rare. Chen Dao was. Perhaps this white chicken has some demonic blood. If I take it to the county town, I'm sure the local lords will like it. I hope it sells for a good price." Chen Dao smiled and nodded. If it does sell well, he could buy more chickens to raise. As the donkey cart continued to move forward, they drew closer to the county town. It was 15 kilometers from the village, but the donkey cart wasn't slow going. Within an hour, they could see the city wall in the distance. Chunda and the other two finally breathed a sigh of relief. Along the way, they had to be wary not only of refugees, but also of bandits. A single mistake could mean their lives were in danger. Fortunately, they had a safe journey. Before entering the city, however, Chun Dao noticed that there seemed to be more refugees outside the city than on the roads. Dressed in rags, they attempted to pour into the city, but were roughly driven away by soldiers. Clearly, the city didn't welcome these refugees. So, Many of them set up makeshift huts outside the city as a temporary refuge. Even more alarming was the number of corpses Chun Dao saw along the roadside. Some had starved to death in front of the city gates, unnoticed. Some bodies might even have been eaten by other refugees. Stop looking, let's go in first. Chin da grib, chin do is shold. The donkey cart passed inspection and entered the city smoothly. As soon as they stepped through the city gate, they were greeted by a completely different scene. Outside the city was hell, but inside, it was like heaven. The cobblestone streets were clean and tidy, bustling with people. The shops on both sides of the street were bustling with activity. The vendors were constantly shouting, and the aroma of rice filled the air, making Chun Dao's stomach rumble. How's it going? Isn't it bustling? Chun Si said with a smug look on his face. It's certainly bustling, Chun Dao nodded. While it couldn't compare to a modern city, it was a world apart from Qinjia village. The people here are neatly dressed, have rosy complexions, and are full of life. They are far better than those in the village who are still struggling to make ends meet, not to mention those outside the city. This county town has so many fun places. Chun Si introduced the brothels, tea houses, storytellers, etc. Enough, Chunda interrupted impatiently. Business is more important. He said to Chun Dao, we'll go sell furs, then go shopping. Xiao Dao, you go to the market to sell chickens. We'll meet at the city gate before 3 p.m. Okay, uncle. The group split up. Chunda and his group drove toward the fur shop. Chun Dao, carrying a chicken coop, walked along the east side of the street, looking for a place to sell chickens. He asked as he walked, and finally came to a busy street. There were many vendors here, almost all of whom were selling chickens, ducks, and geese. Chickens for sale. Gray-feathered roosters, 100 won each. Red-clawed ducks, cheap. Killed geese, 41 per pound. The streets were bustling with shouts. Chun Dao looked up and saw this must be the market, a perfect place to sell his white-feathered chicken. Chapter 6. The expensive price of food. The sounds of street vendors were heard one after another. Chun Dao carried the chicken cage and walked to an inconspicuous corner and sat down, placing the cage beside him, ready to try his luck and see if anyone would come to buy this white-feathered chicken. Before I could wait long, a simple and honest middle-aged man came over and greeted me warmly. Little brother, your chicken is quite rare. Where did you get it? Chun Dao looked at the man. He was in his 40s, with dark skin and a somewhat silly smile. He looked like the kind of honest man who was used to doing manual labor. He replied calmly, I was lucky. I found it. He also noticed that this man was also selling chickens, and much more professionally than he was. He had 5 chicken cages, each holding 3 gray-feathered chickens. Your chicken is really nice. It's big, smooth, and white unlike mine, which are all gray, the man said, giving a thumbs up with envy. Chun Dao smiled shyly and asked, What's your name, brother? Just call me Wuhan. What about you, little brother? My name is Chun Dao. Wuhan was quite talkative. He sat down next to him, and the two of them started chatting. Are you from out of town? Wuhan asked. Yes, from the village, Qinjia village, just outside the city. Are you from the city? Chun Dao asked back. Of course. Wuhan was a little proud when he heard that. The city is good, but food is too expensive. You know, a pound of rice costs 15 cents now. Those gray merchants are really cruel. Chun Dao was stunned by what he heard and felt a little uncomfortable. The people in the city complained, but at least they could afford to eat rice, while his family couldn't even afford rice bran. Wuhan asked again, What about your village? Can you still eat? Chun Dao shook his head. Previous years have been fine, but this year, the situation was dire. The villagers were relying on Chunda to go into the city to buy food to barely survive. Ah, no wonder there are so many refugees outside the city. Wuhan sighed softly, not asking any more questions. As they were talking, a woman stopped in front of Chun Dao's stall, interrupting their chat. Can I see this chicken? The woman asked in a clear, crisp voice. Chun Dao looked up, his eyes wide open. The woman was tall and pretty, dressed in a stylish outfit, exuding a heroic air. She didn't look like an ordinary person. Of course. Chun Dao quickly stood up, opened the cage, and handed her the chicken. She reached out and grabbed it without hesitation, turning it over to examine it carefully, not afraid of getting her clothes dirty. This chicken looks so strange, like it has some monster blood mixed in with it, the woman said thoughtfully. Whether there's demon beast blood or not, I really don't know, Chun Dao answered honestly. The woman nodded, undeterred. I want this chicken. How much? Chun Dao pondered for a moment, then consulted the market price. A gray-feathered chicken weighed 3 pounds and it was 101. His white-feathered chicken weighed at least 6 pounds and could lay eggs. 501, he tentatively offered. Deal. The woman agreed without hesitation, pulling out a cloth bag from her waist. Seeing her so happy, Qingdao felt a little regretful, cursing inwardly. This woman is definitely not short of money. I just quoted too little. Sure enough, the other party took out a silver ingot worth 1 tael and asked him with a smile. Can you give me the change? Qingdao was confused. How could he have so much change? He had no choice but to ask Wu Han for help. Wu Han was also a straightforward man. He took out 10 strings of copper coins, gave half to the woman and half to Qingdao, took the money himself, and even waited to confirm. Thank you, Brother Wu. Qingdao happily put the 5 strings of copper coins into his arms and handed over the chicken. By the way, the woman suddenly stopped before turning around, turned back and added, if you still have this kind of chicken in the future, you can go to the Fuhu boxing gym and find me. My name is Li Ying. After that, she turned around and left without even saying hello. Wu Han gazed at the woman's back, marveling. This girl is probably a martial artist. Is she a martial artist? Qingdao whispered. Her hands are so calloused, and she's dressed smartly. She has an extraordinary aura. The Fuhu Fist Gym is one of the best in the city. Anyone who can train there must at least have some connections. Qingdao listened thoughtfully. This trip to the city had unexpectedly brought him the acquaintance of a warrior. A sudden longing arose in his heart. If he could become a warrior himself, wouldn't his life be completely different? But just as the thought was forming, reality interrupted it. His family couldn't even afford meat. So how could they possibly train in martial arts? Qingdao suppressed his distracting thoughts and continued. Brother Wu, how much are you selling these gray-feathered chickens for? Wu Han was stunned. You want to buy chickens? Yes, I plan to raise a few more. Can the price be cheaper? Okay, you seem to be a nice person. 80 won each, it can't be any lower. Qingdao calculated in his mind that he still had 183 won, plus the 500 when he just got from selling chickens, a total of 683 won. At 80 won per chicken, he could buy at most 8. But he still had to save some money for food and feed, because raising more chickens wouldn't be enough for them to eat on their own. So he said, I'll buy 5 first, and I'll keep the rest. Wu Han was also forthright, cramming all 5 chickens into the cage and handing them to him. Qingdao happily paid 400 coins, secretly delighted. If all 5 of these could become white-feathered chickens, that would be 3 taels of silver. The hope of getting rich seemed to be right before his eyes. He asked again, Brother Wu, is there a grain store nearby? Wu Han raised his hand and pointed to the street ahead. There's a grain store just outside this street. Thank you. Qingdao, carrying the chicken coop, walked quickly towards the grain store. As soon as I walked in, I saw Chunda and his friends in the store. Uncle Chun, you're here too? Chunda smiled and nodded. Of course I'm here to buy food. Then he noticed the chicken coop in Chundao's hand and asked in surprise, why did the chicken change? That one sold, and this one's just bought, Chundao explained. Chun Si didn't quite understand. Why did you buy these roosters? They don't lay eggs, it's a waste of food. Chun Jiang also shook his head. Xiao Dao, it's not appropriate for us to buy chickens at this time. Don't let others rip us off. Qingdao didn't explain much, just smiled and said, Don't worry, guys. I have a plan. Qingdao didn't say anything else. Instead, he glanced at the chicken coop, thoughtfully silent. Let's buy some food first, he said, inviting the others to help him choose some. The store was quite large, housing a wide variety of food, each clearly marked with its own price. The wooden sign clearly stated, rice 15, 1 per jean, 500 g, millet 13 1, white flour 12 1, sorghum flour 8 1, sorghum 7 1, rice bran powder 3 1, and rice bran the cheapest at 2 1 per jean, 500 g. Rice is really expensive. Qingdao couldn't help but sigh. For someone like him who just made a living selling chickens, these prices weren't very good. Chapter 7 is about the people who do odd jobs in the county town. Most of them only earn 30 or 40 cents a day, which is barely enough to buy 2 kilograms of rice, and that is only enough to feed one person. An adult man needs to eat 2 to 3 kilograms of rice every day just to maintain his physical strength. If you calculate it this way, a day's hard work can't even support himself, let alone his family. Of course, most people couldn't bear to eat rice, opting for the cheaper sorghum flour. But sorghum flour still cost 8 cents per pound, and buying 5 pounds a day was a good deal, enough to sustain a family of 3. Any more, and they'd starve. No wonder my family's only able to eat bran flour, Qingdao said, looking at the grain prices and smiling bitterly. He searched his pockets and found only 283 when left. He planned to buy 20 jin, 1,000 jin, of sorghum flour, 10 jin, 1,000 jin, of sorghum, and 20 jin, 1,000 jin, of rice bran for his chickens. He called a shop assistant over and told him all the food he wanted. After paying, he was almost out of copper coins, with only 13 when left. "Please help me load the grain onto the donkey cart at the door," he ordered. The servant moved swiftly, quickly loading the grain onto the cart. Meanwhile, Chunda and the other two had already agreed on the amount of grain the village needed, and the servant was busy going back and forth to help them load the cart. Grain prices are getting more outrageous every day. Chun-Si muttered in a low voice, his face full of indignation. "Don't talk nonsense," Chunda said solemnly. "The grain merchants have people behind them, and we villagers can't afford to offend them." Soon, the cart was piled full of grain, and the waiter came forward to announce, "Sir, the grain has been loaded." "Thank you." Chunda nodded and said thank you, then looked at his companions. "Let's set off and return to the village." The four of them got on the donkey cart, and Chun-Si drove it slowly out of the city gate. As soon as the donkey cart left the county town, it was spotted by a group of refugees. "Is the cart full of food? There's so much food. It would be great if you could give me some." "Should we? Are we stupid? They're carrying bows. They'll lose their lives if they try to steal them." The refugees looked at the donkey cart with eyes as bright as wolves, but unfortunately, they didn't have the courage to take action. Under their greedy gazes, the donkey cart finally drifted away, disappearing from view. Chun-Jiang finally breathed a sigh of relief, his entire body relaxing. "That was so scary. I thought they were going to rush over and steal the food," Chun Dao said, wiping the sweat from his forehead, a wave of fear welling up in his veins. Luckily, the group still had some sense. Otherwise, if they really fought, they wouldn't be able to protect the food in the car. "Don't relax. We still have a long way to go home." Chunda remained alert, his eyes scanning the woods on both sides vigilantly. The refugees weren't the most dangerous. There were also the possibility of bandits popping up and robbers. Chun-Jiang immediately sat up straight and began to carefully observe the movements along the road. At the entrance of Chunjia village, the villagers were already waiting anxiously. "He hasn't come back yet. Is he in trouble?" An old villager couldn't help but mutter. "Old Chun, stop talking nonsense," a sturdy woman immediately scolded. "Yeah, Chunda is so capable, who dares to touch him? And there's Chun-Si and Chun-Jiang. Together, those three dare to fight even wild boars. What are they afraid of? You're such a jerk." Everyone started to scold the old man, and the atmosphere became tense. The old man didn't get angry, but waved his hand and said, "I'm just worried." At this moment, someone exclaimed, "Look, they are back." Everyone's eyes instantly turned to the village entrance and saw a donkey cart slowly approaching. It was Chunda and his group. "That's great. I'm glad everything's fine. The car is full. They must have bought food. This time we can have food to eat." Everyone cheered and went to greet them, as if they were welcoming a general returning triumphantly from the battlefield. Chunda jumped out of the car, smiling and shouting, "Don't worry, everyone, we've brought back the food." "Well done, Chunda." The villagers cheered excitedly. Village Chief Chun, he squeezed into the crowd, patted Chunda on the shoulder, and said with praise, "Chunda, thank you for your hard work, and those guys too." Chun Dei waved his hand and said nonchalantly, "It's no big deal. Aside from what Chun Dao bought himself, everything else is in the cart. Village Chief, just distribute the food according to Mr. Lee's list. I won't interfere." "Okay." The village chief nodded immediately and called out to everyone, "Come, drive the cart to my house, and we'll distribute the food slowly." The villagers rushed forward, pushing the cart toward the village chief's house. Chun Dao's glanced at the 40 kilograms of grain and the chicken coop on the ground and said, "Uncle Chun, can you help me move it?" Chunda glanced at him, realizing he had something else to ask, and nodded. Together, they carried the food to Chun Dao's doorstep. As soon as they entered, Li Ping and Chun Fei came out to greet them. The little girl ran over quickly with her short legs and threw herself on Chun Dao's lap. "Brother." Chun Dao squatted down, touched her head, and asked with a smile, "Did you miss me? Mom and I are worried about you." Chun Fei whispered, pressing her cheek against his thigh. Li Ping also walked over and greeted Chunda, sister-in-law. Chunda nodded in response. Li Ping then helped carry the food and chicken coop into the front yard, poured hot water for the two of them, and took Chen Fei into the house, leaving them room to talk. Chun Dao held the teacup, warmed his hands, hesitated for a moment, and finally spoke. Uncle Chun, do you still have chicken heartgrass? Chunda paused, looked at Chun Dao, and said in a slightly deep voice, was the chicken you sold fed with this grass? In fact, he had already guessed it in his heart, and now he just wanted to confirm it. Yes. Chun Dao nodded, not intending to hide anything. The chicken's feather color and body shape have changed. There must be a reason. Tell me, how did it happen? It's not complicated, actually. Chun Dao paused. Just feed the gray-feathered chicken heartgrass for 3 consecutive days, and it will evolve into a white-feathered chicken. Chunda was shocked after hearing this, but then he lowered his voice and said, this is a recipe that can be sold for silver. You told me this. Aren't you afraid that I will snatch it away? I'm not afraid. Chun Dao looked at him seriously. My father once said that you're not his biological brother, but you're better than a brother. It wouldn't be surprising if anyone in the village could harm me, but I believe you wouldn't. Chunda was stunned, his eyes filled with emotion. The bond between him and Chun Ping was beyond the comprehension of outsiders. They had grown up together, hunting, working the fields, drinking, everything was woven with a brotherly bond. After Chun Ping's death, he practically fell into a slump, and it took him a long time to recover. When Chun Dao mentioned Chun Ping's words, he couldn't hold it in any longer, his eyes welling up. Your father is the best brother I've ever had. Chunda gritted his teeth, his voice low and hoarse. He remembered how Chun Ping often shared half of the family's food with him when they were little, and how he was always the first to come to his aid when he was injured while hunting. The friendship they had at that time was something that blood was thicker than water. He had always felt that Chun Ping was half his life. Now, not only did Chun Dao not treat him as an outsider, but he also told him the way to make money. How could he not be moved? Chun Dao looked at him, his heart moved. Although he knew from his original memory that they had a deep relationship, he had never imagined it was this deep, that a single sentence could bring Chun Dao to tears. He was willing to share this, partly out of affection, and partly because he wanted to continue borrowing the chicken heartgrass. Furthermore, sooner or later, Chunda would discover the effects of this grass. Instead of hiding it, it would be better to reveal it and win a favor and trust. He had a clear calculation. Chapter 8 Shocking Price. Chunda was silent for a long time before he recovered from his emotions and promised seriously that he would never reveal the secret recipe even if he risked his life. Chun Dao waved his hand and said softly that he actually told Chunda this not to keep it secret, but because he sincerely hoped that his uncle could use this method and stop risking his life hunting. Although Chunda is doing well in the village, in fact, every time he goes into the mountains, it is like gambling with his life. Once he encounters a wild beast that is difficult to deal with, he may lose his life. Chunda was stunned for a moment and looked at Chun Dao, as if he had not yet reacted. You mean, you want me to use this method too? Chun Dao nodded and told the truth seriously. He sold the white-feathered chicken for a full 500 won, and a gray-feathered chicken cost only 100 won. The profit in between was nothing short of astonishing. The price of 500 won shocked Chunda. He had originally thought the chicken would fetch a good price, but the 5-fold difference was beyond his expectations. Even Li Ping, who was eavesdropping in the room, was shocked by the figure. In her eyes, this was a sum that an average person wouldn't be able to save in a year. Chunda asked in disbelief, really 500 won? It wasn't that he didn't trust Chun Dao, but the price was too scary. He couldn't earn that much even in a single hunt. Chun Dao was quite calm. He pointed to the grain and chicken coops piled in the yard and said, otherwise, how could I afford to buy so much at once? After hearing Chun Dao's explanation, Chunda took a breath. The young man before him held a chance to make a fortune, and he even shared the secret recipe with him unconditionally. Chunda was deeply moved and sincerely thanked him. Shout out, Uncle, thank you so much for your aunt and Tai Dan. For him, with this method, he no longer needs to risk his head going into the mountains every day. At least he can live in peace without worrying about losing his life one day. Chun Dao simply smiled faintly and said that this was what he should do. After all, Chunda had taken good care of the 3 of them over the years, so he should repay him. After hearing this, Chunda felt even more strongly that this child was a man of integrity. His expression grew serious, and he warned, don't tell anyone else about this secret recipe, not even to people from your own village. Chun Dao nodded, understanding. He knew well that even the best relationships couldn't withstand the temptation of enormous profits. In this world, the human heart is the most difficult to guard against. Chunda finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, I still have some chicken heart grass at home. I'll send it all to you later. Give it all to me. Chun Dao was a little surprised and asked, Aren't you going to raise chickens yourself? Chunda smiled and said, Of course we have to raise chickens, but we can't start right away. We have to wait until we buy chickens. He said, For now, we'll save the grass for Chun Dao, which is easy to find in the mountains anyway. There's a lot of this chicken heart grass in the mountains. Uncle can pick it any time. He said this calmly and confidently. After all, he knew the mountains very well. Chun Dao was still a little worried, afraid of danger. But Chunda shook his head, saying that this was different from hunting. Picking grass wouldn't be that complicated, and there was no need to go deep into the mountains. Chun Dao was grateful and smiled and agreed. Chunda nodded, said he would ask Tai Dan to bring the grass later, and turned and left. As soon as Chunda left, Li Ping came out from the inner room and asked in disbelief, Did the chicken really sell for 501? She was originally confused about how the family suddenly had so much food. After hearing the conversation between Chun Dao and Chunda, she finally understood. It's true. Chun Dao nodded affirmatively and comforted Li Ping, telling her to stop being frugal and cook more meals. Previously, to save food, Li Ping always cooked just enough to keep the family afloat. A full meal was a luxury. Now, life was finally looking up. Li Ping's eyes were slightly red as she looked at her son, feeling that he had grown up so quickly. Now he could not only share the burden of the family, but also found hope for a turnaround. After a while, Chun Taidan also brought over the chicken heart grass. Chun Dao took the chicken heart grass, counted it, and said to Taidan, Do you want to stay at your brother's house for a while? But Taidan rubbed his red, frozen hands, shook his head, said it was too cold, and ran back to his house. After Taidan left, Chun Dao finished counting the plants. There were 16 in total, just enough for the gray-feathered chickens. He picked out 5 plants and fed them to the 5 roosters. He also took out a mixture of sorghum and rice bran from the house and sprinkled it around the chicken coop, watching them peck at the food. As he fed them, he wondered if the chickens, if well-fed, would grow bigger and fetch a higher price when they turned white-feathered. This was precisely why he bought the rice bran and sorghum. Simply put, it was to give the chickens a supplement, hoping they would be better nourished and stronger. At this moment, a message about sorghum appeared before his eyes. Sorghum, characteristics, heat-loving, low yield. Route 1. Soak in cold stone grass juice, 80% chance of upgrading to cold-resistant sorghum. Route 2. Stimulate with fish pollen. There's a 90% chance of evolving into high-yield sorghum, with a yield of up to 600 gene per mu. Chun Dao's heart skipped a beat. This hint came at a perfect time. It seemed his cheat code would only display its advanced information after he actually owned something. He hadn't noticed it earlier. It wasn't until he bought the sorghum home that the system automatically displayed this information. High yield, cold resistant. If we can grow it, it will be a lifesaver. But then Chun Dao thought again and shook his head. In this cold winter, it is impossible to grow anything in the fields. Besides, this was a feudal dynasty. It wasn't like Blue Star, where there was scientific research and patents. If you grew abnormal crops, you'd be immediately arrested and executed as a demon. He knew that if he managed to grow a good crop of sorghum in a freezing cold place like Qingzhou, he would likely be targeted by the government the next day, and his life might even be in jeopardy. Chun Dao smiled bitterly and sighed. I'm still too weak. Not to mention producing high-yield crops. Even raising chickens required him to be done in secret, fearing that his secret recipe would be known. Right now, what he wanted most wasn't to get rich, but to become stronger, either to become a warrior himself or to raise powerful fighting chickens. At least he had to have a way to stay alive. At this time, Li Ping's voice came from the house. Shout out, it's time to eat. Coming. Chun Dao responded, patted the rice bran on his hands, turned around, and went back to the house. The atmosphere at the dinner table tonight was particularly warm. Chun Dao and Xiaomei's bowls were both filled with fragrant sorghum porridge, and Li Ping's bowl was no longer as watery as before. Chun Dao looked at the food and said with a smile, Mom, you should eat more in the future and stop saving so much. He noticed that the porridge in Li Ping's bowl was still thinner than theirs. It was obvious that she was used to eating frugally. Even though she was no longer short of food, she still didn't want to take more. Chapter 9 Good news, Mom knows. Li Ping nodded on the surface, but it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Meanwhile, the Chun family was also having a lively dinner. Chui Lian, I had a conversation with Xiao Dao this afternoon, and I need to tell you about it. Chun put down his bowl and chopsticks and spoke hesitantly. He told her everything about the secret recipe for breeding white-feathered chickens that Dao had given him. Hitsuilian was shocked when she heard this. He actually told you such a valuable method. Even she knew that this chicken-raising method was definitely a big secret that could make money. Chen sighed. Yeah, I was surprised too. Brother Ping's son is really promising. This child is sensible. Hitsuilian nodded. But remember, this recipe can't be passed on to others. Xiaodao's family has had a hard time. I understand. Chen nodded and then asked, Xiaodao wants us to make money this way too. What do you think? Hitsuilian's eyes lit up. This is certainly a good thing. This way you won't have to go to the mountains to hunt every day. Everyone in the village said that Chunda lived a better life than others, but only Hitsuilian knew that it was the result of his hard work. The mountains were full of dangers, and every time Chunda went out, she was worried, afraid that if something happened, she would be left alone and helpless for the rest of her life. Although Chunda had been lucky over the years, and had basically always returned safely, and with some gains, she knew that this was not a long-term solution. Now that she had a new way to make money, how could she not be happy? She just hoped her husband would stop risking his life for food. I'm glad you feel the same way. Chunda smiled, but hesitated. But I always feel bad about taking Xiaodao's secret recipe for free. Hitsuilian didn't care. They've already offered it, so why not? We could just make some money and give them some subsidies. Shangda nodded. Okay, see if anyone in the village still has gray-feathered chickens tomorrow, and see if you can trade them for some grain. That's easy. Using money might be difficult, but exchanging it for food is definitely possible. Every household in the village is short of food right now. As long as you offer a lot, there will always be someone willing to exchange it. Then I'll go into the mountains again tomorrow and bring back more chicken heartgrass. Be careful, don't let anything happen. The next morning, Chun Dao first fed his 5 chickens some chicken heartgrass and the feed he had mixed himself, then went out. He planned to ask Li Zheng, the only scholar in the village, something. As soon as he walked out of the house, he ran into 3 young men. The tall, thin man in the lead laughed sarcastically. Hey, isn't that Chun Dao? Chun Dao glanced at them, feeling a little impatient. He remembered these 3 people, Chun Jin, Chun Yin, and Chun Tong, the village's 3 scoundrel brothers. These 3 brothers lost their parents at a young age and grew up relying on the support of their fellow villagers, but they developed a habit of laziness. Their family originally had a few acres of land, but they preferred to sell it and travel to the city rather than farm. Finally, when their money ran out, they returned to the village and continued to rely on the villagers for food, even accepting anyone's cooking. In the past, the villagers could tolerate them somewhat, but now that life is difficult, who wants to be fed for free? Their lives are becoming increasingly difficult. I heard your family bought 5 chickens. Chun Jin patted Chun Dao's shoulder. Shouldn't we brothers get one too? Yesterday, during the village grain distribution, everyone saw Chun Dao carrying a chicken coop and a pile of grain. At first, they didn't think much of it, but then they realized something was wrong. Wasn't his family incredibly poor? Where did the money come from? The news soon spread throughout the village. The villagers just treated it as gossip, expressing envy. But for Chun Jin and the other 2, it was a different story. Your father treated us to a meal back then, Chun Jin said with a playful smile. You're doing well now. Shouldn't you take care of us a little? Chun Dao refused to listen and coldly pushed his hand away. Why should I give it to you? A normal person would have left by now, but Chun Jin and his friends were incredibly thick-skinned and kept pestering him. You have 5 chickens, so what if you give us one? Didn't the village chief say that villagers have to help each other? Yes, your family is better off than ours, so you have to give them a hand. Right? They talked one after another, speaking with confidence, as if it would be unjust for others not to give them what they wanted. Chun Dao didn't bother to pay any attention and simply walked past them. But Chun Jin and the other 2 refused to give in and blocked their way. Chun Jin even threatened, if you don't give us the chicken, don't blame us for being rude. Chun Dao stopped, his face calm, but his heart was burning with anger. I'm going to find Uncle Chun. Get out of the way. Hearing the word, Uncle Chun, Chun Jin immediately flinched. He knew who Chun Dao was talking about. It was Chunda, the village's best fighter. If Chunda hadn't been there, Chun Jin would have simply barged into the Chun family and robbed them. After all, besides him, there were only 2 women in Chun Dao's house. How could they possibly stop 3 strong men? Chun Dao snorted coldly and walked around the 3 of them. Bah! Chun Yin spat at his back, annoyed. This kid is so shameless. Why not just beat him up? Are you stupid? Chen Jin rolled his eyes at him. Beat him up is easy, but can you handle him, Chunda? Although Chanda was usually honest, he was feared when he got physical. They had all suffered from his fists when they were young. He couldn't even share his chickens. What a jerk. It's all because he didn't die last time. Chen Jin gritted his teeth. They had been targeting Chen Dao for a long time, waiting for his death so they could take over the Chen family. He had even planned to sell Chen Fei to the county town for money, but who knew he'd survive? This guy must have a lot of money hidden away, Chenin said, narrowing his eyes. Why don't we find a chance to get some? I'll think of a way, Chen Jin said, his head bowed in thought. Elsewhere, Chen Dao walked along the village road, his face grim, his heart filled with frustration and anger. He was a teenager, no match for the opponent in both strength and age. A head-on confrontation would be pointless. We need to get the fighting chickens on the agenda, he silently resolved. At this moment, he walked to a spacious house and knocked on the door. Who is it? A gentle voice rang out from within. I'm Chen Dao, and I'd like to consult Mr. Li about something. I'm coming. The door opened, revealing a bookish face. It was none other than Li Zheng, the most learned man in the village. Li Zheng fled famine and arrived in Qinjia village 10 years ago. He is a true scholar. The villagers respect those with knowledge. Upon learning of his learning, the village chief took the initiative to build this house for him so that he could live in peace. Chapter 10, the first fighting chicken village chief, Chun, he was a man of foresight. When he was building Li Zheng's house, he also planned the village school as well. Because he always hoped that the children in the village could go to school, the area of the homestead was larger than that of most families. However, although the ideal is good, the reality is cruel. A school alone wasn't enough. Studying required paper, pens, books, and a teacher. These were practically luxuries for the villagers. In previous years, when the harvest was good, families with a decent income would send their children to learn calligraphy. But now, the weather was bad, and good weather was a luxury. The crops had failed miserably. The villagers were barely making ends meet. So who would be willing to pay tuition for their children's education? They couldn't even afford paper and pens. One day, Li Zheng took Qin Dao into a small study. There weren't many books in the study, most of which Li Zheng had brought with him when he fled to Qinjia village. Books were so valuable these days. How much could a teacher afford? Qin Dao's gaze on the bookshelf caught Li Zheng's attention. Do you know how to read? He asked. I know a few. Qin Dao nodded. The writing in this world is quite similar to the traditional Chinese characters in the ancient times of his previous life. Qin Dao can barely understand it based on his memory and guesswork. Your father taught you, right? Li Zheng sighed and said, Your father is the most hard-working and thoughtful person in the whole village. During the busy farming season, he worked hard, and during the slack season, he came to Li Zheng to learn how to read. It was a shame his background was too low. Li Zheng knew that if Chen Ping had been born into a wealthy family in the county, he might have had a promising future. But he was a farmer in Changjia village, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't change his fate. At best, he could only be an accountant. It was difficult to advance further. But it's no use thinking about it now. The person is already dead. Li Zheng turned to look at Chen Dao and asked him why he came to see him. Mr. Li, I want to ask you about two things, black-clawed chicken and sumac flowers. Have you heard of them? Li Zheng frowned, pondering for a moment before slowly saying, I've never heard of black-clawed chicken, but I do know a thing or two about sapban flowers. Chen Dao perked up and quickly asked. Sapban flowers are a common medicinal herb, Li Zheng explained, stroking his beard. When dried, they can clear away heat and reduce internal heat. You should be able to buy them at any pharmacy. Can be bought at a pharmacy? That's great. Chen Dao's heart warmed, but he remained calm and thanked Li Zheng. Li Zheng naturally accepted the thanks with peace of mind. As a teacher, the happiest thing was that someone asked him for advice. Although Chen Dao wasn't a student, answering the questions gave him a sense of accomplishment. Would you like to have a meal before leaving? No thanks, Chen Dao said, waving his hand. He knew that Li Zheng's life was not easy these days. Without students and without tuition, life was very tight. How could he afford to eat for free? As he walked out of Li Zheng's house, Chen Dao looked back and couldn't help but sigh softly. Even a cultured and respected man like Li Zheng was living in poverty these days. His arms were as thin as sticks, and his eye sockets were sunken. Furthermore, Li Zheng had always lived alone. He had lived in the village for 10 years, yet he hadn't even taken a wife. There had been girls in the village willing to marry him before, and the village chief had even been eager to act as a matchmaker, But Li Jing always made excuses and ended up being alone. Returning home, Chun Dao looked at the gray-feathered chickens in the chicken coop, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. The materials for upgrading the white-feathered chickens were already in place, so the most important thing now was to successfully upgrade all of the gray-feathered chickens. As long as they could all become white-feathered chickens, they could be taken to the county town to sell for money. This would generate enough capital to buy sumac flowers from the herbalist and prepare for the next step. If everything succeeds, that'll be 3 taels of silver. Maybe our family situation will change completely. Chen Dao's mind was filled with meat and rice. Who wouldn't want to improve their lives when they're starving 2 days later? Chun Dao and his sister Li Ping stood in front of the chicken coop, their eyes filled with surprise. As expected, all 5 gray-feathered chickens had advanced to white-feathered chickens. No, to be more precise, 4 white-feathered chickens, plus 1 outlier. Among the flock, 1 chicken stood out. The other white-feathered chickens all have white feathers, yellow beaks, and yellow claws, but this one's feathers are still pure white, but its claws are shiny black with a metallic luster. Its beak is golden, and its body is obviously larger, full of momentum. A system prompt appeared before Chun Dao's eyes. Black-footed chicken. Born due to a sudden mutation during the advancement of the gray-feathered chicken, no further advancement is allowed. Black-footed chicken features agile and amazing combat power, comparable to a 9th-grade warrior, actually mutated. Chen Dao was ecstatic. The word mutation wasn't common in this world, but he was from Earth, so it was all too familiar. And this mutation was a good thing. After arriving in this strange world, the 2 words he felt most deeply were poverty and hunger. What followed was a deep sense of insecurity. But now he had a black-footed chicken at home with fighting power comparable to that of a warrior. It was a pleasant surprise. He looked down at this unusual chicken, his heart surging with excitement and hope. From gray-feathered chickens to white-feathered chickens, and then to this unexpected fighting chicken. This is not only a success in breeding, but also more like a new door opened by fate for him. Chapter 11. The powerful fighting chicken. Chun Dao's recent anxiety came from all directions. Whether it was the refugees on the official road with starving eyes, or the threats posed by the gang of Chen Jin and his 3 brothers, they all made him feel extremely insecure. You have to understand, this isn't the modern society of his past life, with its perfect legal system and ubiquitous surveillance. In this world, murder and robbery are not uncommon, and could happen right outside your doorstep any day. Although he'd appeared calm these past few days, he was actually on edge, constantly on edge. Fortunately, things had turned around. The birth of the black-footed chicken was like a shot in the arm, giving him a strong sense of security. According to the Golden Finger's instructions, this black-footed chicken was not only fast and responsive, but also possessed combat power comparable to a 9th-grade warrior. This wasn't just a casual remark. What kind of status did a 9th-grade warrior hold in this world? Even in a county town, they were respected figures. And now, he actually possessed a fighting chicken that was on par with a 9th-grade warrior. Chen Dao's lips curled up involuntarily. At that moment, he felt more at ease than ever before. Xiao Dao, why does this chicken look so strange? Li Ping noticed something was wrong. Compared with other white-feathered chickens in the chicken coop, this chicken is particularly eye-catching. Although its feathers are still white, its shiny black claws and golden beak make it look extraordinary at first glance. Chen Dao didn't rush to explain. Instead, he opened the cage, took the black-footed chicken out, and placed it on the ground. Cluck, cluck! The black-footed chicken let out a delighted cry as it landed. It had clearly been suffocating, unable to move freely in the coop. Now, finally free, it immediately jumped around in the yard. As the black-footed chicken fluttered about, Chun Dao finally realized its true size. When the chicken stood up, its head nearly reached his knees. He nearly lost his balance when he tried to carry it out. He estimated the chicken must have weighed at least 15 kilograms. A 15-pound fighting chicken. That's incredible. Chen Dao's eyes lit up. After running around the yard, the black-footed chicken naturally came back and rubbed against Chun Dao's trouser leg, looking like a spoiled child. How could this look like a chicken? It looked like a human-like pet. You're quite smart. Chun Dao bent down and touched its feathers and said casually, "From now on, you'll be called Xiao He, and you will be responsible for protecting our whole family." Chuckles. Xiao He seemed to understand, barked twice, and then ran to Li Ping and continued to act coquettishly. "This chicken is truly extraordinary. Li Ping smiled, squatting down and petting Xiao Hei's head like a cat. She casually asked, "Are you planning to sell this fine chicken?" "No," Chen Dao blurted out. "Are you kidding? This was a beast worthy of a ninth-grade warrior. He'd have to be crazy to trade it for money." "Mom, this chicken is incredibly powerful. It's almost equivalent to a ninth-rank warrior." "What did you say?" Li Ping's eyes widened. Although she had never seen a so-called warrior, she had heard that a warrior was someone on the same level as a county magistrate. How could they possibly be connected to a chicken? "Xiao Hei, show me what you can do." Chen Dao gave the order without any explanation. Xiao Hei flapped his wings lightly, kicked hard, and instantly jumped over the fence. "So fast." Li Ping's eyes blurred, and she didn't see how Xiao Hei jumped at all. She was nervous. Is it going to run away? Before he could finish his words, Xiao Hei leaped back again. This time, he stopped in front of a wooden fence in the yard and pecked at it fiercely. With a pop, a transparent hole was pecked out of the wood. Is this really a chicken? Li Ping was completely stunned. The scene before her completely overturned her understanding of chickens. A normal chicken wouldn't even be able to dig up the soil, but this one could easily penetrate wood if it pecked at a person. Wouldn't that mean it would penetrate right through them? "Mom, do you believe it now?" Seeing Li Ping's surprised expression, Chen Dao couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Hei truly lived up to his reputation, truly the best of the fighting chickens. "I believe it. I believe it." Li Ping nodded repeatedly, shock still lingering in her eyes. "Xiao Dao, how did you get this chicken?" "I don't know either," Chen Dao said perfunctorily. "Maybe I'm lucky. Anyway, this chicken will be the guardian beast of our family in the future." Li Ping nodded, and the worry on her face eased a lot. But soon she frowned and asked, "This chicken is so powerful. What does it eat?" This question stumped Chen Dao. Although he could see Xiao Hei's attributes from the golden finger, he didn't get any information about feeding. After a moment's thought, he returned to the house, grabbed some sorghum and bran, and scattered them in front of Xiao Hei. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Xiao Hei pecked at the food cheerfully, devouring it with great relish. "Great! It's eating regular feed." Chen Dao breathed a sigh of relief. If this chicken had needed any gold, silver, or jewelry, he wouldn't have known where to find it. Just as the two were watching Xiao Hei enjoying his meal, a childish voice rang out from the courtyard gate. "Mom, brother!" It was Chun Fei, who had just woken up. The little girl rubbed her eyes and ran out. She threw herself at Chun Dao's legs, looked up at Xiao Hei, and asked curiously, "Brother, why is this chicken so beautiful?" Chen Dao patted her head and said with a smile, "His name is Xiao Hei. Do you want to play with him?" "Yes." Chun Fei nodded excitedly. "Then you can have fun with Xiao Hei at home." After that, Chen Dao turned to Li Ping and said, "Mom, I'm going to Uncle Chen's house." Li Ping nodded, knowing that he wanted to discuss selling chickens in the city, so she didn't say anything more. Chapter 12. Unbearable to watch. "Uncle Chen, Aunt He, Xiao Dao is here." Chen Dao, who had already exchanged greetings with the Chen family, said straight to the point, "I'd like to ask my uncle to escort me to the county town." "Have you raised your chickens yet?" Chen Don asked. In the past 3 days, he had gone into the mountains several times and collected a large amount of chicken heart grass. He also used food to exchange for 10 gray-feathered chickens from other villagers. Now he has fed these chickens with chicken heart grass once. In 2 days, he will be able to raise white-feathered chickens. "Good." Chen Dao nodded. "I plan to go to the city to sell these white-feathered chickens and buy some gray-feathered chickens. Uncle Chen, please accompany me. It is too dangerous to go to the county town alone, so Chen Dao must find someone to accompany him. The best candidate for an escort is naturally Chen Dao, who has the highest martial arts value and the best archery skills in the village. Of course, Chen Dao could also take Xiao Hei with him on the road, but for safety reasons, Chen Dao did not intend to show Xiao Hei's magical powers to others. "No problem." Chen Dao agreed immediately. "I'm also planning to go into the city to buy some gray-feathered chickens and food to feed them. Let's set off now." After saying that, Chen Dao turned to He Plian and instructed, "Wife, you stay home and take care of Tai Dan. I'll try to get back before dark. Go ahead. I'll take care of the house." Soon, Chen Dao borrowed a donkey cart from the village chief, and Chen Dao returned home to take the 4 white-feathered chickens in the cage, and then the two met at the entrance of the village. "Uncle, are we missing a few people?" Looking at Chen Dao standing next to the donkey cart, Chen Dao couldn't help but ask worriedly. In the past, every time they went to the county town, the young and strong men in the village would go in groups. At the very least, the three hunters with higher martial arts values, Chunda, Chun-Si, and Chun-Jiang, would travel together. Now there are only Chun-Dao and Chunda, and they are inevitably a little weak. No way. Chunda lowered his voice and said, "After all, it's not good for others to know that we are raising white-feathered chickens. Only the two of us can go." "Two?" Chun-Dao nodded, but still a little worried. "If it's just the two of us, will it be dangerous?" "Don't worry, Xiao Dao. Don't you know your uncle's archery skills?" Chunda patted the bow, an arrow on his back, and said comfortingly, "Those road bullies and bandits on the road are not stupid. When they see me carrying a bow and arrow, they generally won't regard us as targets for looting. Otherwise, if I fight to the death, they will not have an easy time either. Besides, these things of ours are not worth their desperate efforts to grab." Chun Dao thought about it and realized that this was the truth, so he said nothing more, got on the donkey cart, and let Chunda drive the cart to the county town. When I set foot on the official road again, there seemed to be more refugees on the road. The refugees with numb expressions and ragged clothes walked slowly on the official road, and it seemed that they had only one goal in their minds: to reach the county town. Many refugees also noticed the donkey cart of Chun Dao and his companion, but the bow and arrow on Chun Dao's back was quite intimidating, so no refugees tried to rob them. Alas, these refugees are just ordinary farmers. Looking at these skinny refugees, Chunda couldn't help but feel sad. These refugees were actually no different from the villagers of Chinjia village. They were all ordinary farmers. However, natural disasters and man-made disasters turned them into refugees, and they looked like neither human nor ghost. Chun Dao did not respond to Chunda, but he couldn't help feeling complicated. In fact, if it was just a natural disaster, the people could still live. The most terrifying thing was the heavy taxes and levies imposed by the government. Land tax, head tax, and various other harsh taxes and corvée forced countless low-level farmers into bankruptcy and forced them to become refugees. Becoming a refugee at least means not having to face heavy taxes and corvée labor, but continuing to farm will only lead to death. It's a scene of a fallen nation. Chun Dao sighed inwardly. In his previous life, Chun Dao would occasionally read history books and knew clearly that every time a dynasty came to an end, there would always be natural disasters and man-made disasters. Natural disasters alone may not be enough to cause a country to collapse, but if man-made disasters are added to the mix, then the country is not far from destruction. When countless lower-class people can no longer survive, that is the moment when this dynasty collapses. The people are not afraid of death, so why would they be afraid of rebelling and being beheaded? Those high-ranking officials may be aware of this truth, but people are selfish. Who is willing to donate generously for the country and sacrifice their own interests? It is okay to worry about the country and the people, but it is absolutely unacceptable to let officials sacrifice their own interests. As the donkey cart approached the county town, there seemed to be more refugees gathered outside the county town. The last time he came to the county town, Chun Dao estimated that there were only a few hundred refugees. But now, outside the county town, looking around, there were probably no less than 1,000 refugees. Chun Dao also noticed that there seemed to be government officials distributing porridge outside the city. But the porridge, it's not even as good as the porridge Chun Dao eats at home. It's so thin that you can see the bottom of the bowl. It's more like water with some porridge than porridge. In addition, Chun Dao also noticed that some well-dressed people, who seemed to come from wealthy families, were talking to the refugees. Those are for buying servants. Chun Dao, noticing Chun Dao's gaze, explained, whenever refugees enter the city, the wealthy families in the city will send servants out to buy maids and servants from the refugees. For food, refugees with families don't mind selling their children. By selling their children, at least they and their children have a chance to survive. If they don't sell their children, they will starve to death outside the city. This, Chun Dao opened his mouth with a complicated expression. In his previous life, he had always hated human trafficking, and he loathed human traffickers even more. He never expected that in this world, he would witness human trafficking with his own eyes, and that it was actually voluntary on the part of the parents. In addition to the servants of wealthy families, there are also the madams of brothels and prostitutes. Chunda pointed at a heavily made-up woman not far from the two men and said they would pick out girls with good looks and buy them. After training them for a few years, they would use them as escorts to earn money for the brothel. Chun Dao was silent, feeling a little blocked in his heart. He saw with his own eyes a ragged, emaciated woman handing the little girl beside her to the brothel's madam in exchange for a small bag of food. The little girl was reluctant to leave her mother and cried heart-wrenchingly. The woman's eyes were also blurred with tears, but she could only force herself to turn her head away and not look at her daughter. The people in the brothel seemed to be accustomed to this scene and continued to select girls with better looks with expressionless faces. What a fucking world! Chun Dao cursed inwardly, feeling uncomfortable and blocked in his heart. The scene outside the city was undoubtedly a trampling on human nature. Chun Dao, who had received education in China, could not bear to look directly at what was happening before his eyes. He even wanted to rush forward to rescue the girls, but reason told Chun Dao that he couldn't do that, otherwise it would bring disaster to himself and his family. Chapter 13: Shatter Dreams. Let's go, Uncle Chun. Chun Dao forced himself to look away and gestured for Chunda to go into the city. Stop! The soldiers guarding the city stopped Chun Dao and his companion as they tried to enter the city. After carefully checking the pass presented by Chunda, they refused to let them in and said, "You need to pay a 10 entrance fee to enter the city." What? Chunda was completely confused. He had never heard of the city entrance fee. There are many refugees outside the city now, and we need to pay an entry fee to prevent them from entering the city. The soldier who stopped the two men reiterated it again, his face serious and not like he was joking. 10 copper coins from the lining of his clothes and give them to the soldiers guarding the city, and only then were the two of them able to enter the city. The gathering of refugees outside the city did not seem to affect the city at all, and the city was still peaceful and prosperous. Chunda, driving his donkey cart along the wide flagstone road, said angrily, "Damn it, it costs 10 copper coins just to enter the city. The officials and soldiers in the city are crazy about money." After some complaints, Chunda looked at Chun Dao and asked, "Xiao Dao, are you going to the East Market to sell these chickens?" Chun Dao thought for a moment and replied, "I've already contacted the buyer. Uncle Chun, please go directly to the Fuhu boxing gym." Okowo. Chun Ziran didn't know where the Fuhu boxing gym was, so he had to ask passersby as he walked forward. Not long after, the donkey cart stopped in front of a martial arts gym. "This place is incredible." Chunda stopped the donkey cart, looked around inside. The area where the Fuhu boxing gym is located is obviously different from ordinary county residential areas. The houses here are extremely magnificent and the environment is quiet, which is far more livable than the noisy area at the city gate. Chun Dao was also looking around. Compared to the hell outside the county town, it would not be an exaggeration to say that this place was a paradise. The pedestrians passing by on the roadside were all well-dressed and had full facial features. They were completely different from the skinny and ragged refugees outside the city. Not to mention the refugees, even Chun Dao and the other two, and the residents of this area, were no different from beggars. The residents here at least wore clean and tidy clothes, but Chun Dao and the other two. Chunda was still better off, but Chun Dao was wearing patched and ragged clothes covered in dust. It was obvious at a glance that he was not a resident of this place. Even many passersby who passed by looked at Chun Dao with contempt, as if saying in their hearts, "Where did this beggar come from?" Chun Dao ignored all these glances and approached the gate of Fuhu Martial Arts School. He pointed at the chicken coop at Chun Dao's feet and said to the guard at the gate, "This is the chicken that Miss Li Ying asked me to buy. Please help me notify her." The tall guard looked Chun Dao up and down, nodded, and walked into the martial arts hall. "Xiao Dao." Chunda was a little surprised and asked, "How did you get to know the people from Fuhu Martial Arts School?" When Chun Dao mentioned going to Fuhu Martial Arts School, Chun Dabian felt that the place name was somewhat familiar. Only now did he remember that he knew Fuhu Martial Arts School. The Fuhu Boxing Gym is one of the largest martial arts gyms in the entire county. The owner of the gym, Li Hu, is extremely well known throughout the county and is a person who can have equal dialogue with the county magistrate. Chun Ziran, who often comes to the county, has heard of the name of the Fuhu Boxing Gym. "I met him when I was selling chickens." Chun Dao told the story of his previous experience of selling chickens. A look of realization immediately crossed Chun Da's face. No wonder your chickens sell for such a high price. The people at Fuhu Boxing Gym are definitely not short of money. As soon as Chun Da finished speaking, the guard who entered the martial arts hall had already returned with Li Ying. "Big sister, this kid is looking for you." The guard pointed at Chun Dao and introduced him to Li Ying. Li Ying obviously had a good memory and immediately remembered who Chun Dao was. Are you the kid who sold chickens before? It's me. Chun Dao nodded quickly and replied, I got 4 more chickens of the same kind this time and plan to sell them to you. Hearing this, Li Ying's gaze fell on the chicken coop next to Chun Da's feet, and her eyes suddenly lit up. She had already eaten the white feathered chicken she bought from Chun Dao last time. The taste was very good, far better than the common gray feathered chicken. Even her father Li Hu praised it highly. Therefore, Li Ying was in a very good mood when he saw the white feathered chicken again. He said cheerfully, I want all your chickens. How about the same price of 500 won per chicken? As soon as these words came out, Chun Da and Chun Dao were secretly delighted and quickly agreed. No problem. Okay, I'll go inside and get the silver for you. Li Ying turned around and went into the hall to get the silver. Chun Dao looked inside the hall through the open door, but saw that it was a huge open space. Many disciples were practicing their boxing in a methodical manner, sweating profusely. Is this what martial arts training is? Chun Dao noticed that the martial arts school disciples' boxing techniques were quite methodical, and when they swung their fists, they gave people a feeling of great power. Chun Dao couldn't help but feel a little envious. He also wanted to learn martial arts, but the conditions at home simply don't allow him to practice martial arts. Why? You want to learn martial arts too? Li Ying, who had returned, noticed Chun Dao's gaze and couldn't help but ask. Of course I do. Chun Dao said bluntly that in this world, the status of warriors is comparable to that of officials on Earth in his previous life. How could he not want to learn martial arts? Li Ying looked Chun Dao up and down, then shook his head and said, You're too thin and weak to practice martial arts. Practicing martial arts is not an easy task. Not only does it require a strong body, but it also requires a lot of money to buy herbs to strengthen the blood and qi. Chun Dao's body is so thin, and he is a prostitute. He simply does not have enough money to practice martial arts. A trace of sadness flashed across Chun Dao's face. What Li Ying said undoubtedly shattered his dream of practicing martial arts. It's possible that your elders are. Li Ying looked at Chun Dao again and commented, He's strong enough and a good candidate for martial arts training. Unfortunately, he's too old. Even if he starts practicing martial arts now, he won't achieve much. After some comments, Li Ying handed 2 taels of silver to Chun Dao, and then picked up the chicken cage and prepared to return to the martial arts hall. At this time, Chun Dao said, Miss Li, do you want a chicken like this in the future? Want? Li Ying said without hesitation. As long as you can find it, I will take as many as you want. Ugh. Li Ying's figure disappeared in the martial arts hall. Chun Dao took a reluctant look at the scene in the martial arts hall and then drove away with Chun Da in a donkey cart. Although the martial arts school is good, it is not suitable for him after all. Xiao Dao. Chun Da, who was driving the donkey cart, asked, What are you going to do next? Chun Dao thought for a moment and said, Uncle Chun, please take me to the pharmacy. Okowo. A moment later, the donkey cart stopped in front of a pharmacy called Bai Keatang. Chun Dao got off the donkey cart and went straight into the pharmacy. Inside the pharmacy, a gray-haired old man was taking a patient's pulse. Noticing Chun Dao coming in, he said, Please wait a moment, sir. Chapter 14, Advanced Materials Obtained. Chun Dao nodded and started looking around the store. This pharmacy is quite similar to the Chinese medicine store in the previous life. The smell of Chinese herbs is very strong in the house. There's a large cabinet on the wall behind the old man. The cabinet is divided into small cabinets, and the outside is labeled with the herbs inside. Perhaps because the pharmacy was not big, the old man did not hire any assistants. He was the only one in the entire pharmacy who was responsible for seeing patients and selling medicines. After seeing off the last customer, the old man looked at Chun Dao and asked, Young man, do you want to see a doctor or buy medicine? Buy medicine. Chun Dao said, I want to buy some sumac flowers. I wonder if the shopkeeper has any for sale here. Of course I do. The shopkeeper stood up and took out a dried sappan flower from a small cabinet behind him. This is the sappan flower. The price is 3 coins each. Chun Dao looked at the sumac flowers on the counter and said thoughtfully, I wonder if the shopkeeper has any fresh sumac flower for sale? Chun Dao remembered clearly that in order for white-feathered chickens to advance to yellow-feathered chickens, they needed to crush the sappan flowers and chicken heartgrass into juice and feed them. However, the sappan flower in front of him had been dried, so it was obviously impossible to crush it into juice. Fresh hematoxylin flowers? The old man was startled, then said, Young man, you came at the right time. We just happened to have a batch of fresh medicinal herbs arriving today. After saying that, The old man turned around and shouted to the inner hall, "Xiao Shi, come out for a moment." "Here I come." A clear voice came from the inner hall, and then a beautiful girl in her 20s walked over through the pearl curtain. "This is my granddaughter, Su Xiaoxi." The old man introduced Chun Dao and then said to the girl, "Xiaoxi, this customer wants to buy fresh sapban flowers. Can you see if there are any herbs that have been delivered recently?" "Please wait a moment, sir." Su Xiaoxi turned and entered the inner hall and returned shortly afterwards carrying a cloth bag. She placed the cloth bag on the counter and immediately opened it. "Grandpa, this is all the sumac flowers delivered today." The old man nodded gently at Su Xiaoxi and continued, "Young man, this is all the fresh sumac flowers we have in our store. How many would you like to buy?" Chen Dao looked at the fresh sumac flowers on the counter, feeling delighted, but said calmly, "Shopkeeper, I want all of these sumac flowers." "How much do you want them for?" "Want all." There are quite a lot of sumac flowers on the counter, as many as 30. A hint of joy appeared on the old man's face. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll give you 2 coins for each. There are 30 coins here in total. Young man, just give me 60 coins. Okowo." Chen Dao nodded in agreement, took out a tael of silver, and handed it to the shopkeeper. After the shopkeeper gave him the change, he walked out of the pharmacy carrying the cloth bag containing the sumac flowers. Outside the pharmacy, Chunda, who was guarding the donkey cart, saw Chun Dao coming out and asked, "Xiao Dao, are you done?" Chen Dao nodded and said, "Next we can go buy some gray-feathered chickens." "Okay." Chunda happily drove his donkey cart towards the East Market. A quarter of an hour later, the donkey cart stopped at the street where Chun Dao used to sell white-feathered chickens. Chun Dao jumped off the donkey cart and unexpectedly saw an acquaintance. "Brother Wu, why are you still here?" Chun Dao looked at the stall owner in front of him with some surprise. This person was none other than Wu Han, who had sold chickens with Chun Dao before. However, today Wu Han was not selling chickens but ducks. It turns out to be Brother Chun. Wu Han was very happy to see Chun Dao. He said with a smile, "I'm a salesman. Where else can I be if not here?" "2." Chun Dao nodded, then asked, "How did your cargo change from chicken to duck?" Wu Han waved his hand and said, "We vendors naturally sell whatever we have." After saying that, Wu Han looked at Chunda, who was standing beside Chun Dao, and asked, "Who is this?" "This is my uncle Chunda. It turns out to be Brother Chun." Wu Han praised, "Brother Chun, you can tell at a glance that you're a good man with this physique." Because Chunda practiced archery all year round and often went into the mountains to hunt, he exercised a lot and had no shortage of meat, so he had an extremely strong physique, which was very different from ordinary farmers. This was also the reason why Li Ying said that Chunda was suitable for martial arts. "Brother Wu, you are too kind." Shenda responde somevatim bahasedli. Chen Dao said, "Brother Wu, we're planning to buy some gray-feathered chickens here. Do you have any for sale?" "Gone." Wu Han shook his head and said, "I've sold out all the gray-feathered chickens I had." After saying that, Wu Han added, "But I can help you contact other chicken vendors. With my influence, the price should be much cheaper." Chen Dao naturally wouldn't refuse help from an acquaintance, and said quickly, "Then I'll trouble you, Brother Wu. It's just a small matter. Please help me watch the stall." Wu Han got up and ran to a nearby stall to talk to a chicken vendor, and soon returned with the vendor. "This is Old Man Li, the chicken seller." Wu Han pointed to the stall owner and introduced him to Chun Dao and the others, saying, "He has 20 gray-feathered chickens, half male and half female. I've already agreed with him that no matter how many you want, the price will be 101 for hens and 91 for roosters." Chen Dao looked at Old Man Li. He had a dark face and a thin body. He didn't look like a peddler, but more like a farmer. In fact, most of the men Chun Dao met in this world looked like Old Man Li. Being underfed and skinny was the normal appearance of the lower classes in this world. Being as strong as Chunda was actually abnormal. As for being obese, obesity is not a trouble for people in this world, but a happiness. People at the bottom of society can't even get enough to eat, let alone be obese. Obese people can only be seen in wealthy families. "Don't worry, little brother Chun." Wu Han continued. "Old Man Li is also an honest man. The chickens he sells are definitely not infected." Chen Dao nodded slightly, thought for a moment, and said to Old Man Li, "I'm planning to buy all your chickens. Can you give me a discount?" Old Man Li's eyes lit up instantly, and he couldn't help asking, "You want all of them?" Even Wu Han, who was standing by, couldn't help but be shocked. 20 chickens cost about 2 taels of silver. Brother Chen Dao, whom I only met once, is actually so rich. All of them. Chen Dao nodded solemnly. Seeing this, Old Man Li's eyes lit up even more, and he couldn't wait to say, "If you want them all, I can charge you 90 coins each, regardless of gender." Regardless of gender, a hen would cost 90 won each, saving 101. Chen Dao immediately nodded and agreed. Okay, so the two began a trade. Chen Dao gave 1 tael of silver and 800 copper coins to Old Man Li, and then put all of Old Man Li's 4 chicken cages on the donkey cart. Chapter 15, Edible Little Black. After the transaction was completed, Old Man Li left. Wu Han couldn't help but say enviously, "Brother Chun, you've made a fortune, buying so many chickens at once." Wu Han was really envious. Although there were always chickens and ducks that could not be sold out at his stall, in fact, these chickens and ducks were all purchased from other people. After selling them, he only made a profit from the difference. And Chen Dao immediately took out 2 taels of silver to buy a chicken. His generosity was beyond Wu Han's expectations. "Brother, do I look like a wealthy person?" Chen Dao asked back. Wu Han looked at Chen Dao carefully and suddenly stopped talking. No matter how you look at it, Chen Dao doesn't look like a wealthy man. It's because Chen Dao's body is too thin, and the clothes he wears are patched linen. He looks like a child from a poor family and has nothing to do with being rich. Alas, everyone is having a hard time. Wu Han sighed, looking sad. Nowadays, food prices have skyrocketed, and even he, a native of the county town, feels the hardship of life. Sometimes Wu Han can't help but wonder if one day he will become like the refugees outside the city. After all, taxes are getting heavier nowadays, and even many people in the county town can no longer have enough to eat. "Brother Wu will be leaving first. See you again if we're lucky." Chen Dao said goodbye to Wu Han and drove out of the county with Chunda. After leaving the county town, Chunda, who had remained silent, finally couldn't help but ask, "Xiao Dao, why did you buy so many hens?" The purchase of 20 gray-feathered chickens was something Chen Dao and Chunda had already discussed, but what Chunda didn't understand was, why did Chen Dao buy hens? Hens are more expensive than roosters. If you buy all roosters, you might be able to bargain with Old Man Li and get the price down to around 80 won each. Facing Chen Dao's doubts, Chen Dao asked, "Uncle Chun, didn't you just notice that there are fewer stalls selling goods in the East Market?" Hearing this, Chunda couldn't help but frown and recall, and found that it was indeed as Chen Dao said. The East Market of the county town was very different from the East Market he remembered before. In the past, the East Market was extremely lively, with every street crowded with vendors selling goods and customers buying goods. However, today's East Market seems particularly deserted. Not only are there very few stalls, but there are also very few customers buying goods. The higher the food prices are, the less goods there are. Chen Dao explained, especially livestock like chickens, ducks, and geese. It is very likely that we won't even be able to buy them in the future. Raising livestock also requires food. As food prices rise, people will not have enough to eat, and the number of people able to raise chickens will decrease, or even completely disappear. The reason why Chen Dao bought hens was because he took this into consideration. He hoped to breed more chickens at home instead of going to the city to buy them every time. Not to mention whether he could buy them. Even if he could, with the soaring food prices, the price of live chickens would only get higher and higher. I see. Chunda couldn't help but nod in agreement. Just as Chen Dao said, as food prices rise, fewer and fewer people will raise chickens, and there will be fewer live chickens sold on the market, to the point where it will be difficult to find a chicken. For the long term, you should definitely consider breeding more chickens at home. Thinking of this, Chunda couldn't help but look at Chen Dao and sighed in his heart. Ever since that injury, Chen Dao seems to have become much smarter. Not only has he found a way to raise white-feathered chickens, he has also considered such long-term issues. I believe that Brother Ping's spirit in heaven must feel very relieved, right? Return to Qinjia village. Chen Dao was the first to jump off the donkey cart, unloaded the 4 chicken cages, handed one to Chunda, and said, "Uncle Chun, these are the 5 chickens we agreed on." Before buying the chickens, the 2 men had agreed that Chunda needed a total of 5 chickens, and Chen Dao would buy as many as he could with the money he had. At this time, a total of 20 chickens were purchased, and the agreed 5 would naturally be given to Chunda. General Chun took the chicken cage and took out 450 copper coins from his pocket and handed them to Chen Dao. "Xiao Dao, This is the money to buy the chicken. After Chun Dao took the money, the two parted ways. Chun Dao went to the village chief's house to return the donkey cart, while Chun Dao went straight home. When Chun Dao returned home, he saw his mother Li Ping squatting in the front yard with a sad look on her face. Beside Li Ping was the petite Chin Fei, who also squatted beside her, imitating Li Ping and trying her best to look as sad as Li Ping, which was very funny. Mother. Chun Dao walked into the yard and asked curiously, "Why do you look like this?" He shouted out back. Li Ping breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Chun Dao. Then she pointed to Xiao He in front of her and complained, "Xiao He is such a glutton. He's already eaten 2 kilograms of food in just one day." Chun Dao couldn't help but look at Xiao He, only to see that Xiao He was pecking at the chaff and sorghum scattered on the ground, making a cheerful clucking sound from his mouth. 2 kilograms of food a day? Can you really eat that much? Chun Dao couldn't help but be surprised. You know, a strong laborer only consumes less than 2 kilograms of food a day. Xiao He only eats 2 kilograms of food a day. Doesn't that mean Xiao He consumes more food in a day than an adult laborer? Isn't it? Li Ping said with a look of disgust. After you fed it food this morning, it kept clucking around me. At first I didn't understand what it meant, but then I realized it was hungry, so I had to give it some food. It started eating and couldn't stop from morning to afternoon. It's eaten about 2 kilograms of food so far. It's no wonder Li Ping despised it so much. It was just that Xiao He's food consumption was too high. Even Li Ping's daily food consumption was far less than 2 kilograms, while Xiao He, a chicken, consumed 2 kilograms of food a day. In other words, Xiao He is a chicken comparable to a 9th-grade warrior. Otherwise, Li Ping would have slaughtered it for meat. After all, the family really cannot afford such a large amount of food consumption. It seems fighting chickens aren't so easy to raise. They eat more than I do. Chun Dao muttered in his heart and comforted Li Ping. It's just 2 kilograms of food. Don't worry about it. As he spoke, Chun Dao placed the chicken coop in front of Li Ping and said, "Mom, look what I brought back. Lots of chickens." Before Li Ping could say anything, Chun Fei trotted over and stood in front of the chicken coop, drooling and saying, "So many chickens, brother. Are we going to eat chicken tonight? You just want to eat meat." Li Ping stood up, hit Chun Fei, and asked in shock, "Shout out, how many chickens are there?" 15 in total. 15. Li Ping was shocked and stood there in a daze. Chapter 16, A Thief at Midnight. Are there really 15? Li Ping's eyes widened as she looked through each cage. After confirming there were indeed 15, she said in disbelief, "Xiao Dao, how did you do that?" Li Ping found it hard to believe that Chun Dao could bring back so many chickens. You know, the money she had given to Chun Dao was only 183 won. With today's prices, this amount of money was not enough to buy even 2 chickens. But Chun Dao brought back 15 chickens. Not only that, he also brought back 40 kilograms of food. 183 coins. Li Ping couldn't imagine how Chun Dao bought so many things. "Of course I earned it by selling chickens," Chun Dao explained with a smile. This time, the 4 white-feathered chickens were sold for the same price as before, 500 coins each, for a total of 2 taels of silver. 2 taels of silver. The shock on Li Ping's face became even more intense. Even when Chun Ping was still alive, she had never seen such a large sum of money as 2 taels of silver. "It's 2 taels, but I've almost spent all the silver." Chun Dao spent 61 to buy 15 sappan flowers at the pharmacy and spent another 1,351 to buy chicken. Now he only has 591 left from the 2 taels of silver he earned from selling the chicken, plus the previous 13 won, a total of 603 won left. This money should be spent. After the shock, Li Ping immediately regained her senses. She had realized the money-making potential of raising white-feathered chickens, so she naturally wouldn't be reluctant to spend the 2 taels of silver. "Xiao Dao, you must take good care of these chickens. They are the key to having enough food for our family." "I know, Mother." After placing the chicken coops one by one against the wall and scattering some food around them, Li Ping also prepared dinner. The family of 3 sat in the dim kitchen to eat. Chun Dao looked at the sorghum rice in his bowl, which had no trace of meat, and, after a moment's thought, he said, "Mom, shall we kill a chicken in a few days?" As soon as these words were spoken, Chun Fei, who was sitting next to Chun Dao, immediately lit up her eyes. Despite her young age, she had a great desire to eat meat. "No." Li Ping shook her head nervously. "Our family still relies on those chickens to make money. How can we kill them and eat them?" In Li Ping's view, being able to eat enough is the happiest thing. Eating meat is not a necessity. Instead of killing chickens and eating meat, it is better to sell them in the county town and exchange them for 500 coins to buy food. Mom, listen to me, Chen Dao said. With the secret recipe for raising chickens, our family no longer has any shortage of food, so it's time to eat better. Xiaofei and I are in the growing stage, so we need to eat some meat. Hearing this, Li Ping glanced at the thin Chen Dao and Chen Fei, and her attitude softened a little. She also knew that eating meat was necessary for growth, but she was still reluctant to eat the chicken that cost 500 coins. Mom, believe me, our family will definitely not be short of money and food in the future. We don't need to be reluctant to give up even a chicken. All right, let's do as you say. After dinner, night fell and the entire Qinjia village fell into darkness. In the Xia kingdom, where productivity was low, lighting items such as candles were still relatively expensive for the people. Therefore, at night, every household would be plunged into darkness. Those who had wives would have sex with them at home, while those who didn't could only lie in bed and sleep. Chen Dao naturally had no wife, so he could only lie in bed and think about what would happen next. Each of the 15 chickens has been fed a plant of chicken heartgrass. If nothing goes wrong, 15 white-feathered chickens will be obtained in 3 days. Based on the price of 500 coins per chicken, that is 7.5 taels of silver. With this money, the family's poverty will be greatly improved, and eating white rice with meat will no longer be a luxury. Of course, Chen Dao doesn't plan to sell all the white-feathered chickens. He plans to keep about half of them at home to continue breeding. In addition, he plans to try to cultivate yellow-feathered chickens. White-feathered chickens can be sold for 500 taels. Will yellow-feathered chickens be more expensive? Thinking of this, Chen Dao couldn't help but feel distressed again. Raising chickens requires enough space. Although the number of chickens is still small now, they can be raised in cages. But as the number of chickens increases, the space in the small yard at home will inevitably not be enough. We need to find a way to expand the yard or build a new house. Chen Dao looked at the walls that were leaking air on all sides. The house was really too dilapidated and had almost no effect in keeping out the cold. Even with a quilt covering him, Chen Dao felt cold. It was imperative to build a new house. There's still so much to do. Chen Dao thought about these things and gradually fell asleep. Outside Chen Dao's front yard, 3 sneaky figures appeared. Chen Jin, who was hiding outside the courtyard fence with his 2 brothers, took a look inside the yard through the gap in the fence and said excitedly, "There's no one in the yard. So should we start now?" Chen Yin said eagerly, "Damn Chen Dao. He has so many chickens at home and he won't share them with his brothers. Since he won't give them to us brothers, we brothers will take them ourselves. This guy has so many chickens at home." Chen Tong was drooling. The 3 brothers had been secretly watching Chen Dao for a few days, so they naturally knew that Chen Dao had just brought back a dozen chickens today. After all, Qinjia village is such a small place, and it is impossible for Chen Dao to escape the attention of all the villagers when he brought back chickens today. "You guys wait here, I'll go in and steal the chicken." Chen Jin gave the 2 of them some instructions, then stepped on Chen Yin's back and was about to climb over the fence and enter the yard. Chuckle. But at this moment, the sound of a rooster crowing in the yard scared Chen Jin. Before he could react, a black shadow attacked him. Immediately afterwards, Chen Jin felt a sharp pain in his arm. Ah! The shrill screams broke the peaceful atmosphere of Qinjia village. Chen Dao, who was lying on the bed, immediately opened his eyes, got out of bed, walked behind the door, and looked at the front yard through the gap in the wooden door. Li Ping, who was sitting on the other side of the wall, was also awakened. She subconsciously covered Chen Fei's mouth to prevent her from making any sound, and then lowered her voice and asked, "Xiao Dao, what happened?" "Someone tried to climb over the wall and enter our yard." With the dim moonlight outside, Chen Dao could barely see the scene outside the door, but saw a figure who was about to climb over the fence falling from the fence, and the one who knocked him down was Xiao He, who was dressed in snow white. Chuckle. Xiao He, who had pecked a bloody hole in Chen Jin's arm, had no intention of stopping the attack. He flapped his wings and quickly flew over the fence, pecking at Chen Jin's calf with his sharp beak. Ah! The intense pain made Chen Jin break out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly said to his 2 brothers, "What are you standing there for? Come and help. Here it comes." The 2 brothers Chen Tong and Chen Yin reacted quickly, grabbed the wooden sticks they carried, and swung them at Xiao He. Chapter 17, Chicken Demon? Chuckle. Facing the flapping wings, he dodged left and right, easily avoiding the attack of the wooden stick. Damn it, is this chicken a spirit? Chun-Een said breathlessly that the chicken in front of him was too agile. No matter how he waved the stick, he couldn't touch the chicken at all. Another scream was heard, and Chun-Jin, who fell to the ground, had another bloody hole as thick as a little finger on his body. However, while Xiao-Hei was dodging the attack from the wooden stick, he also hit Chun-Jin with his sharp beak. Chun-Jin screamed in pain and hurriedly yelled at Chun-Een and Chun-Tong, "Hurry up and chase this chicken away." "I got it, big brother." Chun-Tong grabbed the wooden stick and rushed toward Xiao-Hei, waving it randomly, trying to drive Xiao-Hei away. But Xiao-Hei was not afraid of his attack at all. His movements were silent, and he did not give Chun-Tong any chance to hit him. Not only that, while dodging Chun-Tong's attack, Xiao-Hei also attacked Chun-Jin from time to time. In a short while, Chun-Jin's body was covered with blood holes as thick as his little finger. Blood kept dripping from his body to the ground, and he felt that the strength in his body was constantly draining away. "Damn it, this chicken is really weird." Chun-Tong panted and said, "Brother, let's run. We can't handle this chicken. Hold me and run quickly." Chun-Jin didn't dare to stay here any longer, so he quickly asked Chun-Een and Chun-Tong to help him up and tried to escape. However, Xiao-Hei, who had already launched the attack, had no intention of letting them go. Xiao-Hei sped up again, caught up with the three fleeing people, and continued to inflict new wounds on their bodies. Running less than 10 meters, Chun-Een and Chun-Tong had many bloody holes on their bodies and fell to the ground helplessly. Chuckle. Xiao-Hei fixed his eyes on the necks of the three men and was about to launch a fatal attack when a flash of fire suddenly appeared in front of him. The village chief Chun-Hee, holding a torch, led a group of young and strong men over and looked at Chun-Jin and the other two who had fallen to the ground. "Isn't this the Chun-Jin brothers?" A man frowned and asked, "What are they doing here in the middle of the night?" "What else can I do?" Chunda, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with the village chief Chun-Hee, curled his lips and said, 9 out of 10, he's planning to do something shameful again." The one who disliked the three brothers the most in the village was Chunda. This was not only because the three of them had bullied Qingdao, but also because they were idle and unproductive. Damn it, why didn't these three brothers die in the county? Instead, they ran back to the village and provoked others. Why are the three of them covered in blood? Who cares? It's better if they die. They won't have to beg for food in the village all day long. These three brothers showed up here in the middle of the night. It's obvious they're not up to any good. Others also have no good feelings towards the three Chun-Jin brothers. Since they became adults, these three have not done any farm work and have been idle all day long. Almost no one in the village likes them. Let me ask what's going on first. Village Chief Chun, he glanced at Xiao-Hei with a gloomy look. Perhaps Xiao-Hei was afraid of the large number of people on Chun-Hee's side, so he did not launch an attack, but he did not leave either. Instead, he kept a close eye on Chun-Jin and the other two, and was ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. Chun-Hee squatted down in front of Chun-Jin, holding a torch, and said sternly, "What are you three doing here in the middle of the night?" "Help, village chief." Chun-Jin, covered in blood, hugged Chun-Hee's calf and wailed, "I don't know what's wrong with this chicken. It attacked us like crazy. Look at me. My body is covered with bloody holes pecked by it. Yes, village chief, this chicken is simply weird." Chun-Een also echoed, "They attacked us as soon as they saw us, as if they were fighting to the death. We don't know what's going on." Lying is a common thing for Chun-Jin and his friends. They did not say that they wanted to break into Chun-Dao's house to steal the chicken, but only said that the chicken attacked them for no reason. Ridiculous. After hearing the two's explanation, Chunda scoffed and said, "It attacked you for no reason? Why didn't it attack us?" That is, these two brothers must be lying. Not a word of truth came out of his mouth. They must have been trying to do something sneaky, and that's why they were attacked by this chicken. The other young men obviously did not believe the two brothers' explanation and unanimously concluded that the two men must be trying to do something shameful. The reason was very simple. It was the middle of the night, and everyone was resting at home, but Chun-Jin and the other two appeared here. This was obviously very unreasonable. To be honest, Chun-Hee glared at Chun-Jin and scolded him. "I'm telling the truth." Chun-Jin couldn't stop wailing. "I suspect this is a chicken demon. It's incredibly fast, and its beak and claws are extremely sharp." Village chief, Quickly organize some people to kill it, or our village will be in danger. A solemn look flashed across Chun-Hee's face when he heard this. If this chicken was really a chicken demon, as Chun-Jin said, then he would have to get rid of it. After all, demons posed a huge threat to the village. A few years ago, a tiger demon with the blood of a demon beast rushed out of Kangmang Mountain and devoured most of the villagers in a village called Tangjiang at the foot of the mountain. In the end, the government organized warriors in the county to encircle and suppress it, and successfully eliminated the tiger demon. Otherwise, the tiger demon would probably have caused even greater casualties. This isn't a chicken demon. But at this moment, a somewhat childish voice was heard. Seeing that the situation had calmed down, Chun Dao walked out of his front yard and said to Chun-Hee and others, "This is the chicken I raised. It attacked Chun-Jin and the other two because they tried to break into my house." When these words were spoken, everyone looked at each other in surprise. Chun Dao's face showed anger. He walked quickly to Chun-Jin and kicked him. Chun-Jin cried out in pain. Chun Da said coldly, "Fuck you. What did I tell you before? I told you not to bully Xiao Dao, but you turned a deaf ear to my words." Seeing the honest man, Chun Da, getting angry, the young and strong men in the village couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They were familiar with Chun Da and knew that Chun Da rarely got angry, but once he got angry, almost no one in the village could stop him. Oh no, Chun is in big trouble now. Will Chun Da kill these three brothers? It's really possible. Didn't Chun Da beat the three Chun-Jin brothers so badly that they couldn't get out of bed for a month because Chun Dao was bullied? These three brothers deserved it. Damn it, breaking into someone's house in the middle of the night must have been an attempt to steal something. Well done, Chun Da. When the young and strong men saw Chun-Jin being beaten, not only did they not feel any sympathy, many of them even secretly applauded. P.S. Please urge me to update more and send me some free electricity for love. Thank you. Chapter 18 Scum. I didn't steal anything. Chun-Jin loudly defended himself. The three of us brothers were just passing by Chun Dao's house, and then his chicken started attacking us. We really didn't steal anything. Fuck you, you still dare to quibble. Chun Da slapped Chun-Jin in the face, making Chun-Jin see stars. But he still didn't feel satisfied and continued to hit him. The village chief, Chun-Hee, however, reached out to stop Chun Da. Chun Da, don't be impulsive. After stopping Chun Da, Chun-Hee looked at Chun Dao and said, "Xiao Dao, are you sure they wanted to break into your house?" Chun Dao nodded without hesitation. "I saw it with my own eyes." Okowo. Chun-Hee nodded and said to the young man behind him, "Bring the three Chun-Jin brothers to my house." Not long after, the crowd brought Chun-Jin and the other two to the living room of the village chief's house. The village chief looked at Chun-Jin and the other two who were surrounded by the crowd and said, "Tell me, why did you break into Chun Dao's house?" "We didn't break into his house." Chun-Jin said stubbornly, "We are just passing by." Still not admitting it, Chun Da glared at Chun-Jin, who shrank his neck and dared not speak anymore, but was also unwilling to admit that they wanted to break into Chun Dao's house to steal things. These three brothers are completely unafraid of boiling water and will definitely not admit it. You're running near Chun Dao's house in the middle of the night. What else could you do besides want to steal something? Damn these three scums from the village. The young and strong men in the village ultimately stood on Chun Dao's side. After all, the three Chun-Jin brothers had a bad reputation in the village, so everyone naturally preferred to believe Chun Dao. It's okay if you don't admit it. Chun-Hee was too lazy to say anything more and directly said to the villagers next to him, "Second brother, take these three people away. Give each of them 10 strokes of the cane, and then send them directly back home." Chinjia village is called a village, but in fact it is a clan gathered together by members of the Chun family. As the village chief, Chun-Hee still has the power to enforce family rules when the government has no control over this place. The villagers also recognize Chun-Hee's power. After all, what Chun-Hee did in the village was relatively fair, and the villagers were very convinced of him. I see. The villager whom Chun-Hee called the second brother nodded, and led a few young men to drag Chun-Jin and the other two out. Soon, screams of Chun-Jin and the other two were heard outside the living room. Chun-Hee seemed accustomed to such screams. His expression did not change at all. He simply said to Chun Dao, "Xiao Dao, are you satisfied with the result of my handling? Are you satisfied?" Chun Dao was naturally dissatisfied. Chun Dao was extremely dissatisfied with these three people who broke into his home. He wanted to kill them all. But he also knew that this was the best that the village chief Chun he could do. After all, Chun he was only the village chief and not an official, so he could not execute these three people. If you ask me, these three brothers should just be beaten to death. Chen Dao didn't say anything, but Chinda spoke up. It's a complete waste of food to keep these three brothers alive. Killing them directly will save some food. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone nodded in agreement. The villagers had long disliked Chen Jin and his two companions. These three brothers shamelessly went to other people's houses for free meals every day. They were truly shameless. A wry smile flashed across Chun He's face. He didn't have a good impression of Chun Jin and the other two, but he was only the village chief after all. He could usually use his position as the village chief to deal with some unruly villagers, but executing others, he absolutely wouldn't dare to do that. After all, death is not a trivial matter, and the government will hold him accountable. Chun Jin and the other two were badly injured, and after receiving a beating, they'll be unable to leave their beds for at least a month or two. Let's end this matter here. Chen reassured everyone, and then looked at Xiao He at Chen Dao's feet. Xiao Dao, where did this chicken of yours come from? In fact, Chen had noticed Chen Dao's chicken a long time ago. There was no way around it, because Chen Dao's chicken was too different. Its eyes were bright and sharp, its feathers were shiny snow, and its beak and claws reflected a metallic luster, which was very magical. This chicken is so beautiful. It's quite large. I'll probably get a lot of meat if I kill it. This chicken looks very plump. The other villagers also looked at Chen Dao's chicken with envy. In this day and age when people can't even get enough to eat, such a plump chicken is enough to make the villagers excited. What surprised everyone even more was that this chicken was so powerful that it could chase Chun Jin and three other strong men and make them flee in panic, and even peck them all over their bodies. Of course, everyone was just envious. As fellow tribesmen, they were not as greedy as Chun Jin and the other two, and were not thinking of stealing Chen Dao's chickens. This is the chicken I raised. Chen Dao naturally wouldn't tell the truth to everyone, and simply said, I don't know if this chicken ate something special. It's so big. I see. Chen Yi nodded, but didn't delve into it. He just looked at Chen Dao deeply and then looked away. All right, it's late. Everyone go back and rest. Soon, the crowd dispersed in groups of 3 or 2 and returned home in the cold wind. After leaving the village chief's house, Chen Da and Chen Dao walked side by side. As they walked, they asked, Xiao Dao, are you hurt? No. Chen Dao shook his head. The 3 Chen Jin brothers were attacked by Xiao He before they could even enter the front yard of their house. It was impossible for him to hurt Chen Dao at all. That's good. Chen Da breathed a sigh of relief and continued. If you encounter something like this in the future, shout loudly and I will rush over as soon as possible. Chen Dao felt warm in his heart and nodded. I understand. Thank you, uncle. What's there to thank me for? Let's go home and rest. As soon as Chen Daofeng returned home, Li Ping came to greet him and looked at him carefully in the moonlight. Xiao Dao, are you okay? Phoenix. That's good. Li Ping breathed a sigh of relief, still in shock, and said, Luckily, I have Xiao He. Otherwise our family would be unsafe tonight. Although Chun Jin and his 2 companions only wanted to steal things, no one could guarantee that they would not become evil and choose to hurt others. Fortunately, Xiao He successfully repelled them. Otherwise, the 2 women in the family and Chen Dao, a young boy, would not be able to stop the 3 Chen Jin brothers. At this moment, Li Ping no longer felt that Xiao He was wasting food. Instead, she was grateful for Xiao He's existence, which saved her family from disaster. Chen Dao didn't say anything, but he couldn't help feeling a little regretful. If only the village chief and his companions had arrived a little later, it would have been better. Chen Dao, who had been hiding behind the door and observing, knew that if the village chief and his companions had arrived a little later, Chun Jin and the other 2 would have surely died tragically under Xiao He's chicken beak. But killing Chun Jin and the other 2 might not be a good thing. After all, murder is a serious crime. The government's ability to control the villages outside the county town is very weak, and it can even be said that it does not care about them at all except for collecting taxes. But he still takes homicide cases seriously. If he kills Chun Jin and the other 2, he will probably not be able to escape the pursuit of the government. Chapter 19, Enough Power. After all, it's a lack of strength. Chen Dao sighed helplessly. If he had enough power, he wouldn't have to worry about this or that. If he had 1,000 fighting chickens like Xiao He, he could completely ignore the government, the village chief, and others and kill Qinjin and the other two on the spot. Mom, go to bed first. Chun Dao said something to Li Ping, then lay on the bed, thinking about things with a gloomy look in his eyes. 2 days passed in a flash. That morning, He Zuilian stood in the front yard of her home, looking at 15 white-feathered chickens walking on the ground with an excited look on her face. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would probably find it hard to believe that just some chicken heart grass, which was not much more expensive than wild grass, could cause such a big change in the gray-feathered chicken. To be honest, when she first started breeding white-feathered chickens, He Zuilian was somewhat nervous. After all, it was too unreasonable for gray-feathered chickens to advance into white-feathered chickens. Fortunately, He Zuilian now witnessed the birth of the white-feathered chicken with her own eyes, and the anxiety in her heart disappeared in an instant, leaving only joy. According to Chun Dao, a white-feathered chicken can be sold for 500 won, and the 15 chickens in his family are worth 7.5 taels of silver. What is the concept of 7.5 taels of silver? In a peaceful year, this amount of money would be enough for a family of 3 to live comfortably for 2 to 3 years. Even in this year of disaster, it would be enough to buy at least 500 kilograms of rice. The price his family had to pay was only about 1,500 coins in money and grain for purchasing gray-feathered chickens, some chicken heart grass, and some coarse grains for raising gray-feathered chickens. Xiao Dao really didn't lie to us. He Zuilian said with joy, chicken heart grass really can be used to breed white-feathered chickens. Boss, we're going to make a fortune this time. With these white-feathered chickens, you won't have to risk hunting in the mountains anymore. Chinda, who was standing next to him, also had a very happy look on his face. He said, let's go to Xiao Dao's house and thank him properly, etc. As a woman, He Zuilian obviously thought more. I'll go to the house to get some things. Not long after, He Zuilian and Chinda came to Chun Dao's house with a piece of smoked meat. Uncle, why are you here? Chun Dao, who was feeding chicken heart grass to his chickens, asked, today is the 3rd time this batch of chickens has been fed chicken heart grass. Most of the chicken feathers in the chicken coop have turned mostly white. I guess we can harvest 15 white-feathered chickens tomorrow. Xiao Dao, are you feeding the chickens? He Zuilian said happily. Thanks to you, our family has raised white-feathered chickens, a total of 15. Then congratulations, uncle and aunt. Chun Dao was not surprised that the Chun family had bred white-feathered chickens, but he still congratulated them. With this batch of white-feathered chickens, life at the Chun family should be much better. Is Mr. Chin here? Hearing the noise, Li Ping came out of the house and said to He Zuilian with a smile, Sister, what happened today? Why are you so happy? He Zuilian walked over and took Li Ping's hand, smiling and saying, Sister Li, this is the bacon I brought you. You're here now. Why bring any gifts? Li Ping gave He Zuilian a reproachful look. It was not that she was being polite verbally, but she really didn't want He Zuilian to bring a gift. Our family has such a close relationship with the Chun family that it would seem strange to bring gifts to their home. Isn't this to thank Xiao Dao? He Zuilian forced the smoked meat into Li Ping's hand, and then pulled Li Ping into the house to talk. Chun Dao quickly fed the chickens, washed his hands, and asked Chinda Dao, Uncle, what are you going to do with these 15 white-feathered chickens? Chinda thought for a moment and replied, Uncle wants to hear your opinion. Nowadays, Chinda no longer regards Chun Dao as a child. Instead, he thinks Chun Dao is quite intelligent, so he is willing to listen to Chun Dao's opinions. My opinion? Chun Dao pondered for a moment and said, if it were me, I would suggest that you don't sell all the chickens. Why? I told you before that supplies in the county will only become increasingly scarce. We should prepare early and continue to breed more chickens at home instead of going to the county to buy gray-feathered chickens every time. You mean we should buy more food? That's right. Chun Dao nodded. I plan to sell half of the chickens this time and keep the rest at home to continue breeding. I'll use the money from the chicken sales to buy food. Then I'll sell half of it too. Chunda made a decision immediately. He knew very well that he was not a smart person, and Chun Dao seemed to him to be smarter. Therefore, he felt that it would be right to do the same as Chun Dao. After making the decision, Chunda said, Uncle is planning to go to the city to sell chickens tomorrow. Do you want to come with us? Certainly. Chun Dao nodded without hesitation. The chickens he raised could only be sold in the county town, so naturally he had to follow Chunda to the city. What's more, Chun Dao's family has almost used up all the food, so he has to buy some in the county town. We have a lot of cargo this time, so we probably need to find some help. Chunda said that this time the two of them went to the county town not only to sell chickens, but also to purchase a large amount of food. Such a large amount of goods would easily attract the covetousness of bandits and bullies, so they must have enough young and strong people to protect them. Uncle, can you find someone to help? Yes, but it may cost some food. Chunda said, but you don't need to provide the food. I can do it. Then it's decided. We'll set off for the county town tomorrow. Chuckle. The next day, Chun Dao was awakened by Xiao Hei's loud crowing of a rooster. After simply rinsing his mouth with a willow branch, Chun Dao came to the front yard and looked at the chicken coop. White feathered chickens, characteristics, short growth period, high meat production. Advanced Route 1. When a white feathered chicken female is mated with a black clawed chicken male, there is a 60% chance of hatching a jade feathered chicken. Features of jade feathered chicken: short growth period, strong fighting ability. Advanced Route 2. Crush the heart grass and sapban flowers into juice. Feed it for 3 consecutive days. There's a 90% chance that the white feathered chicken will be upgraded to a yellow feathered chicken. Characteristics of yellow feathered chickens: short growth period, high meat production, and short egg-laying cycle. After scanning all the chickens in the chicken coop, a hint of disappointment appeared on Chun Dao's face. In the chicken coop, there are a total of 14 chickens that have evolved into white feathered chickens, but there is one chicken. Although its feathers have turned mostly white and its size has become a little bigger, in Chun Dao's eyes, it is still a gray feathered chicken. Obviously, this chicken failed to advance. Chun Dao then remembered that the chance of a gray-feathered chicken advancing to a white-feathered chicken by feeding it chicken heartgrass was 80%, not 100% success rate. Chapter 20: Entering the city again. Of course, what disappointed Chun Dao the most was not the failure of the gray-feathered chicken to advance, but the fact that no fighting chicken like Xiao Hei was born among this batch of advanced gray-feathered chickens. Chuckle. As soon as Xiao Hei was mentioned, he arrived. He had been in the yard, patrolling everywhere like a bully among chickens. He quickly ran to Chun Dao's feet and rubbed Chun Dao's trouser leg with his chicken head. Are you hungry? Chun Dao immediately understood Xiao Hei's idea and returned to the house to get food to feed Xiao Hei and the white-feathered chickens in the cage. Xiao Dao, it's time to go. Just after feeding the chickens, Chun Dao's voice was heard outside the door. Chun Dao opened the door for Chun Da and said, Uncle, wait for me. After saying that, Chun Dao came to the chicken coop and put all the 7 roosters to be sold into one cage. Then he picked up the cage and went towards the village entrance with Chun Da. At the entrance of the village, a group of young men that Chun Da had called in to help were chatting. Life is so good for everyone, Chun. A young man looked at the chicken coop on the donkey cart, his eyes full of envy. There were 7 roosters in the chicken coop. Each one had white feathers and was big in size, looking quite plump. Chun Chung, you're not trying to steal Chun Da's chicken, are you? Chun Jiang joked with a smile. He naturally knew that Chun Chung would never steal Chun Da's chicken. After all, the people Chun Da hired were all young and strong men with good character in the village. Although their families were poor, they would not do such a thing as stealing chickens and dogs. Chun Jiang, you're looking down on me. Chun Chung. Chun Chung retorted, I'm not one of the 3 Chun Jin brothers. How could I do such a thing? After saying this, Chun Chung sighed again. I'm just a little envious of Mr. Chen's good life. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Not to mention Chun Chung, who in the entire Chunjia village doesn't envy the Chun family's life. Nowadays, every household in the village eats noodle porridge. Only the Chun family can eat meat occasionally, and they can also raise so many chickens. Their life is very prosperous. How do you think Chunda raises these chickens? A young man named Chun Sanshui couldn't help but ask. This chicken is so special. It's big and looks good. It must be much more valuable than a gray-feathered chicken. I guess it has something to do with Brother Dao. Chun Si, who had been to the county town with Chun Dao, said, Didn't we all see the 3 Chun Jin brothers stealing things that night? Brother Dao has chickens like this at home too. Yes, I saw it too. The chicken at Daojoy's house is really powerful. One chicken chased the 3 Chun Jin brothers. I went to Chun Jin's house to see the 3 brothers. The wounds were so deep that you could see the bones. It was very scary. Isn't Dower's family so poor they can barely afford to eat? How can they still afford to raise chickens? Who knows? Maybe he's found a way to get rich. The young men seemed to be thinking about something. The changes in Chunda and Chundao's family could not be hidden from the villagers. After all, the frequent crowing of chickens coming from their yard from time to time could be heard by anyone who was not deaf. Although no one knows how Chundao and Chunda can afford to raise so many chickens, this does not stop them from envying their wealth. Being able to raise so many chickens, Chundao and Chunda's family must not be short of food. What are you talking about? As everyone was talking, Chunda and Chundao walked over side by side. Everyone looked at the chicken coop in Chundao's hand, and the envy in their eyes became even stronger. 7 chickens in Chundao's cage, and each one had bright feathers and was large in size, exactly the same as the chickens that Chun had placed in the car. We're talking about Uncle Chin's chicken. Chun Jiang replied to Chunda, then looked at Chundao and said jokingly, Brother Dao, your family is getting richer now. You can even afford to raise so many chickens. Brother Jiang. Chundao nodded towards Chun Jiang and quickly changed the subject, saying, Thank you all for your help. When we get back to the village, I'll give everyone 5 jean of sorghum flour as a reward. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's faces suddenly showed joy. Brother Dao is generous. I said helping Chunda won't hurt you. 5 pounds of sorghum flour? Brother Dao is really generous. With the promise of 10 kilograms of sorghum flour, everyone's favorable impression of Chun Dao immediately increased. There was no other way. Life was hard for everyone these days. Although 5 kilograms of sorghum flour could not be eaten for long, it would at least allow the family to have more food reserves. Xiao Dao, let me help you carry the chicken coop. Chun Chung diligently helped Chun Dao take over the chicken cage and carefully placed it on the carriage. He had a large family and a lot to eat, so he was extremely eager for the 5 kilograms of sorghum flour. Although the others were not as attentive as Chun Chung, they all treated Chun Dao with special respect and even gave Chun Dao some priority. Okay, let's go. After everyone surrounded Chun Dao and helped him get on the donkey cart, Chun Dao waved his hand and asked Chun Si to drive the donkey cart all the way to the county town. Outside the county town, the number of refugees increased, and even a residential area had been formed. The refugees who gathered outside the town collected wood, built one simple house after another outside the town, and settled down outside the county town. Of course, the houses they built could only help these refugees resist the cold, and most of them were still hungry. Sitting on a donkey cart, Chun Dao saw some unrecognizable corpses and also saw officials distributing porridge. Refugees lined up, holding broken bowls to receive the bland porridge. Every refugee who received the porridge drank the porridge in one gulp like a starving ghost, and then lay down on the ground or went back to lie down in the house they built to minimize energy consumption. Stop! The soldiers at the city gate stopped the donkey cart that was about to enter the city. After checking it, they said, You need to pay 10 coins to enter the city. Master Jun, I haven't heard of this. Chun Si, who was driving the donkey cart, was about to argue, but Chunda stopped him and handed the 10 cents he had prepared to the soldier. Then the donkey cart passed through the city gate smoothly and entered the city. Fuck it. Chun Si glanced back at the soldiers guarding the city and cursed. We have to pay to enter the city. Are these big-headed soldiers and the city officials crazy about money? Chun Si had often gone into the city with Chunda before, but he had never heard of having to pay money to enter the city, so he was particularly annoyed. Stop talking. Less trouble is worse than more. Chunda didn't say anything. He was also annoyed by the practice of charging an entrance fee, but compared to the 10-cent entrance fee, selling chickens was undoubtedly more important. Therefore, Chunda chose to pay the 10-cent fee instead of arguing with the city guards. Besides, there's no point in arguing because those soldiers with knives won't reason with you. P.S. Please give me a good review and a free gift. Thank you all. Chapter 21, Enviable Wealth. Not long after, the donkey cart stopped in front of the Fu Hu boxing gym. The young and strong men in Xinjia village looked at the big houses with expressions of envy and jealousy. Damn it, people in this county town live so well. Damn it, it's a pity I'm not from the county town. The young lady who just passed by was so fair. If I could marry a woman like her, it would be worth dying for. What are you daydreaming about a country bumpkin like you can't possibly marry a lady from the county town? I wish I could have been born in the county town. The young and strong men sighed and hated that they were not from the county town. Chun Dao jumped out of the car and said to the guards at the martial arts gym, Please inform Miss Lee that Chun Dao, the chicken vendor, wants to see you. While speaking, Chun Dao calmly stuffed 20 copper coins into the guard's hand. Chun Dao knew a little about the ways of the world. He didn't get it last time simply because he didn't have much money. Now that he had more money, he naturally needed to bribe the guard. After all, every time he came here to sell chickens, he needed the guard's help to notify Li Ying. Wait. The guard who received the copper coin smiled and quickly entered the martial arts hall to inform Li Ying. Soon, the guard and Li Ying returned together. Brother Chun, are you here again? Li Ying, the owner's only daughter, didn't act condescending at all. Instead, she smiled warmly and asked Chun Dao, "How many chickens did you bring this time?" 14 in total. That's 7 taels of silver? Wait a moment, I'll get the money for you. Soon, Li Ying took out 7 taels of silver from the museum and gave it to Chun Dao. After signaling the guard at the door to help carry the chicken cages into the hall, Li Ying couldn't help but ask curiously, "Brother Chun, where did you get these chickens?" Chun Dao rolled his eyes and said perfunctorily, "Our village is at the foot of Kangmang Mountain. These chickens were caught from Kangmang Mountain." Kangmang Mountain? A trace of awe flashed across Li Ying's face. The vast mountains stretched for thousands of miles and were not a good place. Even warriors did not dare to go deep into them. Li Ying could not imagine how Chun Dao, a young boy, could muster up the courage to enter the mountains. However, after taking a look at Chun Dao and the young man from Chinjia village standing behind Chun Dao, a look of realization appeared on Li Ying's face. Chun Dao and the others should have entered the mountains in groups to hunt, and there was a high probability that they were only hunting on the outskirts of Kangmang Mountain. Otherwise, given the level of danger deep in the Kangmang Mountains, it is impossible for these people to come back. Thinking of this, Li Ying couldn't help but remind him, "Brother Chun, you should try to avoid going into Kangmang Mountain in the future. Money is good, but life is more important." "I see. Thank you for the reminder, Miss Li," Chun Dao said nonchalantly. "Miss Li, we'll leave first. If there are any white-feathered chickens in the future, I'll come find you again." "Okay, bye." Chun Dao and the others got on the donkey cart and left slowly. Li Ying looked at the backs of Chun Dao and the others and sighed softly. It was not difficult to see from Chun Dao's answer just now that Chun Dao did not take her reminder seriously, but after thinking about it carefully, Li Ying felt relieved. In this year, most people cannot get enough food. For villagers outside the city, like Chun Dao, the harvest from hunting in Kangmang Mountain may be their only income. If they give up this income, they will probably starve to death. Even if they don't starve to death, they will probably become the same as the refugees outside the city. Uncle Chun. After walking a little further away from the Fuhu boxing gym, Chun Si asked, "Where are we going next?" "Go to the grain store in East Market." Okowo. The donkey cart stopped in front of the grain store in the East Market. Chun Si and other young and strong men were responsible for guarding the cart, while Chunda and Chun Dao went into the store to buy grain. When you walk into the store, the first thing that catches your eye is the wooden signs with prices stuck on the many grains. Rice, 21/Jean. Mille, 17 cents per pound. White flour, 15 Jean. Sorghum flour, 10 Jean. Sorghum, 9 Jean. Bran powder, 5 cents per ketzi. Rice bran, 4 cents per pound. Food prices have risen again. Chunda muttered to himself, his brows furrowed. "The last time I came here, the price of rice was 15 won, but now it is 21, a full 5 won increase." Other grains such as millet, white flour, and sorghum have also seen varying degrees of price increases. "Sir, you don't know?" A clerk at the grain store heard Chun mumbling to himself and hurriedly explained, "Food is becoming increasingly scarce in this city these days. Food prices are skyrocketing throughout the county. The price increase at our store is relatively small. If you don't believe me, try going to other grain stores. Their prices are much higher than ours." After that, the waiter lowered his voice and said, "Sir, I suggest you buy more food and store it. If nothing unexpected happens, the price of food will continue to rise." Hearing this, Chun Da's expression became solemn. The food shortage in the city was no secret, but he didn't know that the food shortage in the city would be to this extent. What does it mean to buy rice at 21 per pound? A few years ago, before the weather in Qingzhou changed, the price of rice was around 3 won per jean. But now it has soared to 21, a full 7 times the price. With food prices this high, I'm afraid there will be trouble soon. Chun Dao thought to himself that when the people in the city couldn't even afford to eat, chaos would follow. Of course, these have nothing to do with Chun Dao, and Chun Dao is too lazy to think so much. After thinking for a moment, Chun Dao turned to Chunda and said, "Uncle, should we use all the money we have to buy food?" "As you say." After getting Chun Dao's consent, Chun Dao found the owner of the grain store and started talking to him. About a quarter of an hour later, Chun Dao and the shopkeeper agreed on the amount of grain that needed to be purchased. 100 kilograms of rice, 400 kilograms of sorghum flour, and 500 kilograms of rice bran, with a total value of 7 taels of silver. In addition, Chun Dao also paid out an extra 500 copper coins to buy 50 kilograms of sorghum flour as a reward for the help of the young and strong people in the village. "Thank you, sir." Received 7 taels of silver and 500 copper coins for the old rice, was all smiles, and hurriedly asked the shop assistants to help move the grain onto the donkey cart outside the store. Chunda and Dao Gur are so rich. Chun Sanshui, who had been guarding the donkey cart, looked at the grain store clerks coming and going to carry grain, and his envy was beyond words. Chunda and Dao Gur bought rice and sorghum flour, right? They're so rich. Chinching also had a look of envy on his face. He didn't know how long it had been since he had eaten white rice. When he saw the rice at this moment, he couldn't help but miss the fragrant taste of white rice. Not only Chun Chung and Chun Sanshui, but other young men also looked envious. Nowadays, the staple food of almost every household in Qinjia village is bran flour, and sorghum flour is only eaten occasionally. As for white rice, that is unthinkable. Chapter 22, County Honor. Chunda and Chun Dao's family are really rich. So much food and rice. I haven't eaten rice for a long time. Me too. Under the envious gaze of the young and strong people, the clerk of the grain store loaded a total of 1,050 kilograms of grain onto the cart, and then everyone got on the donkey cart together, and Chun Si drove the cart back to Qinjia village. County government office. Just when Chun Dao and others rushed back to Qinjia village, the county magistrate Su Jiwen was sitting in the side hall of the county government office drinking fragrant tea. Standing next to Su Jiwen was the legal advisor he hired. In front of Su Jiwen were the wealthy families in the county who had come at the invitation of the county magistrate. Sitting closest to Su Jiwen were the heads of the 3 richest families in Taiping County, namely the Yuan, Feng, and Zhu families. These 3 families almost monopolized all businesses in Taiping County and were the top wealthy families in Taiping County. Sitting behind these 3 family heads are the owners of the 3 major martial arts schools in the county, namely Li Hu from the Fuhu Fist School, Chui Mang from the Hanzhan Martial Arts School, and Zhang He from the Batui Martial Arts School. Although the 3 martial arts schools are not as wealthy as the 3 major families, they are also the leading forces in Taiping County because of the large number of martial artists in the schools. At this time, a total of 6 people were sitting in their seats, each with a cup of fragrant tea on the table beside them. However, the 6 people had no intention of tasting the tea. Instead, they stared at the county magistrate Su Jiwen on the main seat, trying to figure out his intention of summoning everyone. Unfortunately, Su Jiwen did not show any performance worthy of reference. He just held the fragrant tea and elegantly skimmed off the foam on the top of the tea with the lid. County Master Chui Mang, the head of the Hanzhan boxing gym, who had been staring at Su Jiwen for a long time, finally couldn't hold it in any longer and asked, "I wonder why you summoned us here?" Su Jiwen seemed to have not heard Chui Mang's words at all. Instead, it was the advisor beside him who spoke. "You all don't know." The lawyer clasped his fists towards the crowd and said, "The county magistrate has just received an order from the court, requiring the county to increase taxes. As you all know, the county magistrate has always been concerned about the people. He really can't bear to increase taxes on the working people, so he has no choice but to ask for your help." As soon as these words were spoken, the 6 people present felt a sinking feeling in their hearts. What the lawyer said sounds nice. He can't bear to increase taxes on the people. In other words, doesn't that mean he wants to increase taxes on us big families? Naturally, everyone was unhappy with this behavior of taking flesh from themselves, and they quickly started to rack their brains to think of excuses to refuse. Chui Mang's eyes spun around. Although he looked rough and stupid, he was actually very shrewd. He said hurriedly, "Although running my Hanzhan boxing gym is a bit difficult, the county magistrate has spoken. How can I just sit back and watch?" After some pretentious statements, Chui Mang said, "Hanzhan boxing gym is willing to donate 100 dan of grain to help the county lord." 100 share of grain? Su Jiwen paused and skimming off the foam, his expression expressionless, but he felt a little annoyed in his heart. 100 dan of grain is equivalent to 10,000 jin. It seems like a lot, but in fact it is useless. This amount of food is not enough to meet the court's tax increase requirements, and it is not even enough to provide porridge to the refugees outside the county. My Yuan family is also in a difficult situation right now, but we are willing to donate 100 dan of grain to help the county lord. The Fong family is also willing to provide 100 dan of grain. The Zhu family will provide 100 sure. As if they had discussed it beforehand, the 6 people all shouted out the price of 100 sure of grain. This amount is just a drop in the bucket for each family, and it won't hurt to use it to deal with the county magistrate. It seems that you are unwilling to give face to me, a county magistrate. Su Jiwen finally put the teacup aside with a gloomy expression. As the lord of a county, he had already humbled himself and made a request. But these 6 people did not give him any face at all. 100 dan of grain is enough to feed a beggar. To be honest with you, my life has not been easy for me either. Yuan Zhu, the head of the Yuan family, put on a fake smile and said, now that bandits are everywhere outside the city, our business has also been affected. 100 dan of grain is already the maximum amount our Yuan family can offer. Oh, the legal advisor beside Su Jiwen couldn't help but sneer secretly. The Yuan family can only provide 100 dan of grain? This is almost a lie. Which of the 3 major families in Taiping County is not involved in the grain business? They wouldn't dare say that their families have mountains of grain, but they definitely don't lack it. As for the bandits outside the city affecting the Yuan family's business, that is even more ridiculous. The Yuan family's cargo transportation is protected by warriors supported by the Yuan family. How could those insignificant bandits outside the city have the ability to affect the Yuan family's business? My family has been going through a very difficult time recently. I hope the county master will understand. Fong Tang, the head of the Fong family, said. Others also complained and played the victim to Su Jiwen. Their purpose was obvious. They were unwilling to pay more money in food. Su Jiwen was quite helpless about this. Although he was the magistrate of a county, he could not force these families and martial arts schools too much. After all, the relationship between these families and martial arts schools in the county was complicated. Not to mention anything else, many clerks and constables in this county government were from these families. Once a conflict broke out between him, the county magistrate, and these families, it was hard to say which side those clerks and constables would stand on. Forget it. Just go. Su Jiwen waved his hand, signaling everyone to leave. Everyone didn't want to stay long, so they all stood up and said goodbye. Before they left, Su Jiwen reminded them, each family must deliver 100 dan of grain to the warehouse within 3 days. After everyone left, Su Jiwen leaned back his chair dejectedly and said helplessly, Master He, is there any other way to get these wealthy families to contribute more money in grain? No. The legal advisor named He Jian shook his head. How could it be so easy to take money and food out of the pockets of these big families? The scene just now is the best proof. Even Su Jiwen, the lord of a county, could at most make these big families give him face. As for making them bleed heavily, that was impossible. Then what about the taxes levied by the imperial court? Su Jiwen asked. The amount of taxes imposed by the court on Taiping County this time was not small, and the attitude was extremely harsh. If he could not pay it in full, he might have difficulty keeping his official hat. He Jian thought for a moment and said, perhaps the only option is to make the people suffer a little longer. People? Su Jiwen couldn't help but ask. People are already suffering so much. How can they still afford to pay taxes? Su Jiwen naturally knew about the refugees gathered outside the city, and he even sent some clerks to distribute porridge outside the city. He knew very well that as the cold disaster continued, the people were already overwhelmed. If he continued to impose taxes on them, the refugees outside the city would probably gather in greater numbers, and some might even rise up in rebellion. Chapter 23, Kill the Chicken. Your Excellency, the court's words this time are extremely harsh. If you fail to pay the full amount of taxes, I'm afraid. He Jian didn't say anything, but Su Jiwen knew it clearly in his heart. Su Jiwen was just a scholar from a small family, and he had no nobles to help him in the court. People from other big families would at most receive some light punishment if they could not pay taxes, but he, Su Jiwen, would lose his official hat. Thinking of this, Su Jiwen immediately made a decision and said to He Jian, forget it. You go and arrange the tax collection. Yes. He Jian bowed and left quickly. Su Jiwen leaned back his chair, feeling powerless. Having studied hard since childhood, he has a scholar's noble character in his heart. When he first took up his post in Taiping County, he also thought about making a career and letting the people of Taiping County live a good life. But he didn't realize how difficult it was until he actually started doing it. Indeed, in theory, he, as the county magistrate, is the highest official in Taiping County and can control everything in Taiping County. But the fact is not so. Su Jiwen, the county magistrate, is only the apparent controller of Taiping County. The real controllers are the major families in the city. Once Su Jiwen's policies conflict with the interests of the major families in the county, the people under him will immediately disobey them and will not carry out Su Jiwen's orders at all. This made Su Jiwen very helpless. He wanted to change things, but he didn't know where to start, so he could only let it go. Over time, he became what he is now. He, the county magistrate, is no different from a mascot. When facing those big families, they had no confidence at all. Even if they had a lose face, they could only take out 600 share of grain from the big families. Life is tough. Su Jiwen sighed deeply. Xinjia village. Chun Si drove the donkey cart slowly and stopped at the entrance of the village. The young and strong men jumped out of the car one after another, looking at Chun Dao with burning eyes, thinking about the 5 kilograms of sorghum flour that Chun Dao had promised each of them. Everyone, don't worry. I will definitely not give you less food than I promised you. Chun Dao did not disappoint them and said directly, 5 gene of sorghum flour per person. I'll give it to you now. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone immediately became excited and hurriedly began to distribute the food. Soon, everyone returned home happily with 5 pounds of sorghum flour in their pockets. Chun Dao and Chunda drove the donkey cart towards their home. The donkey cart stopped in front of his house. After unloading his portion of food, Chun Dao said, Uncle, we're going to kill a chicken later. Can you ask Aunt and Tiden to come over and have some? No. Chunda was too embarrassed to eat at Chun Dao's house. So he quickly said, I have things to do when I get home, so I won't eat at your house. Then Uncle, please walk slowly. Good. Chunda drove away in his donkey cart. Chun Dao immediately knocked on the door and shouted, Mom, it's me. Here I come. The door opened, and Li Ping walked out with Chun Fei. They were stunned when they saw the large amount of food on the ground. Xiao Dao, why did you buy so much food? Move in first. I'll tell you in detail later. So Li Ping and Chun Dao moved all the food on the ground into their house. After finishing, Chun Dao told Li Ping about the details of the trip to the county town. After hearing this, Li Ping couldn't help but frown and asked, the price of grain in the city has gone up again? Yes. Life is becoming increasingly difficult for ordinary people like us. Li Ping siga deeply. Rice that costs 21 per pound is totally unaffordable for the common people. You know, many common people may not be able to earn 21 after working for a whole day. Li Ping couldn't help but feel lucky that her son had the ability to find the secret method to raise white-feathered chickens. Otherwise, I'm afraid my family can't even get enough bran flour to eat now. Shout out, how much food did you buy this time? I bought a total of 50 kilograms of rice, 200 kilograms of sorghum flour, and 500 kilograms of rice bran. Chun Dao answered like he knew everything. The rice was for improving the family's meals. Chun Dao was tired of eating sorghum noodles every day and couldn't wait to eat white rice. As for sorghum flour and rice bran, sorghum flour can be eaten occasionally, and its main function is to feed chickens together with rice bran. Rice? Li Ping's eyes widened as she asked, Xiao Dao, why are you buying rice? From Li Ping's perspective, being able to eat sorghum noodles every meal was already the best life could be. Eating rice, she had never even thought about such a thing. Of course I bought it to eat. Chun Dao said, Mom, our family is no longer so short of food, so it's time to eat better. Li Ping was silent. She still couldn't accept the luxury of eating rice. Chun Fei's eyes lit up beside her, and she asked expectantly, Brother, are we going to eat rice? Certainly. Chun Dao stroked Chun Fei's hair and said with a smile, We should not only eat rice, but also meat. Eat meat. Chun Fei became even more excited, hugging Chun Dao's thigh and saying, Brother, I want to eat meat. Chun Dao came to the chicken coop, took out the gray-feathered chicken that failed to advance from the cage, and walked towards the kitchen with the chicken. Xiao Dao, do you really want to kill the chicken? Li Ping followed Chun Dao into the kitchen and asked. Certainly. Chun Dao, while boiling water in a pot, replied, Mom, we have a way to raise white-feathered chickens. We will definitely not be short of food in the future. Don't always think about saving. All right. Li Ping hesitated for a while, but finally agreed to kill the chicken and eat the meat. After all, this was something they had agreed on a long time ago. Go wait outside. Mom will cook. No need, Mom. Go rest outside, and I'll show you my skills. Can you do it? Li Ping said with a look of doubt on her face. In her impression, Chun Dao rarely went into the kitchen, and it was unlikely that he would cook. I'm sure I can do it. Mom, just wait outside. Chun Dao pushed Li Ping out of the kitchen and started to work himself. It's not that Chun Dao has to do the cooking, but Li Ping always adheres to a frugal style when cooking. Less oil and less salt. The rice and dishes she cooked are really hard for Chun Dao, who has enjoyed all the Chinese cuisine on the earth, to swallow. In order to satisfy his stomach, Chun Dao had to cook by himself. Xiao Dao, please don't burn down the kitchen. Li Ping, standing outside the kitchen door, was still a little worried and looked into the kitchen from time to time, fearing that Chun Dao would burn the kitchen or spoil the chicken. Fortunately, Chun Dao was also from the countryside in his previous life, so he knew a little about killing chickens. He first cut the chicken's throat with a knife and caught all the chicken blood in a bowl. Then put the chicken in a boiling water, and then quickly pluck out all the chicken feathers, then take out the chicken's internal organs and put them aside, and then take a kitchen knife and chop the chicken into small pieces. Chapter 24. Fragrant Fried Chicken. The ingredients were ready. Chun Dao heated the pan, and he was going to make fried chicken, which of course required oil. Fortunately, there was still some lard in the kitchen, which Li Ping kept mainly for Chun Dao and Chun Fei to nourish their bodies. After the pan is heated, Chun Dao adds a small amount of lard, then pours the chicken into the pan and starts stir-frying. Sizzle. When the chicken is put into the pot, a strong aroma spreads out. It smells so good. Chun Fei immediately ran to the kitchen door and kept sniffing the fragrance coming from the kitchen. Even Li Ping couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. The aroma of the fried meat was so tempting. Chun Dao's cooking skills are certainly not very proficient, but he has no problem stir-frying chicken. As the old rice was stir-fried, the aroma in the kitchen became stronger and stronger. The three people in the room couldn't help but swallow their saliva. The aroma was too overbearing for three people who had not eaten meat for many years. It seemed to have aroused the gluttony in their stomachs. The strong aroma in the house did not fade until the chicken was cooked. Chun Dao placed the golden fried chicken on a plate and placed it on the kitchen table. He then said to Li Ping and Chun Fei, who had been standing by the kitchen door, "It's time to eat." "Woo, time to eat." Chun Fei moved her little feet quickly and came straight to the table and sat down. Li Ping also came to the table and sat down. Chun Dao filled 3 bowls of steamed rice and placed one in front of each person. He then said to them, "Try the chicken I made. Eat some meat." Chun Fei was undoubtedly the happiest one. She picked up a piece of chicken and stuffed it in her mouth, not caring about the heat. She showed an intoxicated look while chewing. The fried chicken made by Chun Dao was far from delicious due to the lack of seasoning. But for Chun Fei, who had always eaten porridge, the chicken, which was rich in fat, was already the most delicious food in the world. She didn't even want to eat rice and couldn't stop picking up the chicken and stuffing it into her mouth. That was a great time. Chun Fei shook her head and uttered indistinct words of praise. Chun Dao smiled and picked up a piece of chicken and put it in his mouth to chew slowly. To be honest, the taste of this chicken fried with only a little oil and salt was far inferior to the chicken with a lot of spices added in his previous life. However, due to the lack of oil and water in his stomach, Chun Dao still felt it was very delicious. While chewing, he said to Li Ping, "Mom, you should eat too. We can't finish one chicken." "Mom knows." Li Ping picked up a piece of chicken and put it in her mouth. A look of satisfaction flashed across her face, but she didn't eat too much. She just chewed it slowly, savoring the delicious taste of the chicken. Just when Chun Dao and his family of 3 were having dinner. At Chun Cheng's home, the whole family was also having dinner. Like Chun Dao, Chun Cheng also lost his father early, and his father died even earlier than Chun Ping. Shortly after giving birth to Chun Cheng's youngest brother, Chun Cheng's father passed away, leaving his mother Lu Yin alone to raise 6 children. Yes, there are 6 children in Chun Cheng's family. Chun Cheng is the eldest one, and the youngest, Chunya, is only 9 years old. Over the years, it has obviously not been easy for Lu Yin to raise 6 children alone. Lu Yin, who is only in her early 40s, has a face full of wrinkles, just like a 60-year-old woman. Fortunately, the 3 oldest boys, Chun Cheng, Chun Shi, and Chun Mu, are now adults and can help share some of the burden at home. Otherwise, Lu Yin alone would probably find it difficult to support 6 children. But even so, the situation at Chun Cheng's family is still very difficult. The weather is cold now, and the fields at home have no output. Chun Cheng's family has no surplus food and can only rely on some of their previous savings to buy some rice bran to eat. However, what was placed on the dining table in Chun Cheng's home today was not the rice bran as before, but some mushy food. Mom, why is the food in our house better today? Chun Shi, who was sitting at the dining table, couldn't help but wonder. He recognized the food in the bowl. It was sorghum noodles. This kind of food, which Chun Dao despised, was already top-notch food for Chun Cheng's family. In the past, they only ate the cheapest rice bran. It's actually sorghum noodles? Chun Mu was also very surprised. As an adult, he knew some of the situation at home and knew that food like sorghum flour should never appear on his family's table. Brother Dao gave it to me. Chen Cheng explained with a smile. Didn't I help escort Dao Guer and Chunda to the city today? This sorghum flour is their reward for me. 5 pounds of sorghum flour for every trip to the city. The surprise on Chen Mu's face became even more intense. Isn't this Dao's family too wealthy? Yes. Chun Cheng scratched his head and said, we originally agreed with Chunda that each of us would get 2 caddies of sorghum flour. But Dao Guer waved his hand and said he would give us 5 caddies each. Does Chun Dan agree to this? Chun Shi asked in surprise. Chunda was not a generous person. He was often generous only to Chun Dao's family. In addition, including Chun Si and Chun Jiang, when dealing with other people in the village, Chunda was still relatively stingy. This is also the current norm in Qinjia village. Now that everyone is having a hard time, naturally no one is willing to give away a large amount of food to others, even if everyone is related and has the same surname. I don't know what's going on. Chen Xing also said with some doubt. It seems that Chunda listens to Dao Guer very much. Yeah. Chen Mu was a little confused. Chen Shi couldn't help but sigh. Brother Dao is such a particular person. He gave me so much sorghum flour just for a trip to the county town. Big brother, you made the right decision to go to the county town. As he said that, Chen Shi couldn't help but pick up the bowl and take a sip of the noodle soup. Lu Yin, who had been silent the whole time, said to Chun Cheng, Dao is so kind to you. You must listen to Dao more in the future in the village. Lu Yin is just a rural woman and doesn't understand so many big principles, but she still knows who is good to her family. Chun Dao can give her family 5 kilograms of sorghum flour, which makes him the greatest benefactor to her family. Besides that, after listening to Chun Cheng's talk about his trip to the county, Lu Yin felt that Chun Dao was a capable man, and it would definitely be a good idea to let her son spend more time with Chun Dao or even hang out with him. After all, although his eldest son is tall and strong, he is not very smart. I know, Mom. Chun Cheng nodded solemnly and said, from now on, I will listen to Dao Guer in the village. If he tells me to go east, I will never go west. You too. Lu Yin looked at Chun Shi and Chun Mu and said, please help Brother Dao more in the village in the future. I understand, Mother. The adult sons agreed, while the other 3 underage children ate the porridge hungrily, not caring at all about what others were saying. P.S. The typhoon caused a power outage for 4 days and 5 nights. After 5 days of primitive living, I finally survived. Chapter 25, Building a House. Similar conversations took place in more than one household in Qinjia village. Soon, Chun Dao's reputation for generosity spread throughout the village, and the villagers' favorable impression of Chun Dao increased dramatically. In today's context, where every household is saving food, such generous old rice is naturally popular. Of course, Chun Dao didn't know about these things. At this time, Chun Dao was sitting at the dining table, his face full of satisfaction. This was probably the most enjoyable meal Chun Dao had ever had since he traveled through time. White rice with chicken, which was just an ordinary meal in his previous life, gave Chun Dao a completely different sense of satisfaction. He stroked his belly gently, and the expression on his face seemed as if he was still savoring the delicious taste of the chicken. Chun Fei, who was sitting next to Chun Dao, had greasy lips and a look of happiness on her face. Brother, the chicken is so delicious. Can we eat chicken every day from now on? Li Ping, who was clearing the table, couldn't help but glare at Chun Fei. Eat, you girl. All you know is eating. Chun Dao gently stroked Chun Fei's somewhat dry and yellow hair and said with a smile, Brother promised Xiao Fei that we will definitely be able to eat meat every day in the future. Really? Brother. Chun Fei asked with surprise on her face. Of course it's true. Chen Dao smiled and gave an affirmative answer. With the golden finger, the situation of his family would be improved sooner or later, and eating meat every day would definitely not be just a luxury. Very good. Chun Fei clapped her hands happily. As Li Ping cleaned up, she said to Chen Dao, Xiao Dao, don't spoil her too much. How can we eat meat every day? For Li Ping, tonight's meal was already the most extravagant of all. Eating a whole chicken in one meal, if she ate this every day, even the rich landlords can't afford it. Mom, believe me, sooner or later we will be able to eat meat every day. Chun Dao patted Chun Fei's head, motioning her to go to the next room to sleep, and then said seriously, Mom, I plan to rebuild our house. Li Ping, who was clearing the table, was stunned and asked, Where will we get the money to rebuild the house? No money needed. Chun Dao shook his head and said, These days, every household in the village is struggling to get enough to eat. If we're willing to provide food, there will definitely be someone willing to help us build a house. What the village lacks the least is people willing to work hard. As long as they are willing to provide food, Chun Dao believes that there will definitely be plenty of people willing to help his family with the work. How much food will that cost? Li Ping said hesitantly that she knew how dilapidated her house was and had thought about renovating it, but the family property did not allow it. It won't take much. Chen Dao analyzed for Li Ping, saying, We probably only need 4 or 5 people to help. Assuming each person consumes 2 kilograms of food per day, that's only about 10 kilograms of food needed per day. We can still afford this. This time, Chun Dao brought back a total of 50 kilograms of rice and 200 kilograms of sorghum flour. If rice bran is included, the total amount is 750 kilograms. When asking the villagers to help with the work, it is of course impossible to feed them white rice as their food. All they need to do is mix sorghum flour and bran and cook them for them to eat. This is not because Chun Dao is mistreating the laborers in the village, but this kind of food is not bad for many people in the village. As for the building materials, Xinjia village is at the foot of Kangmang Mountain. There is so much wood available for felling that there is no shortage of building materials. 10 kilograms a day. Li Ping frowned and thought. It would take at least a month to renovate the house, which meant at least 300 kilograms of grain. Li Ping still finds this number hard to accept. However, she did not refute Chen Dao's proposal, but just said, Xiao Dao, you decide for yourself. Li Ping has regarded Chun Dao as the backbone of the family. Unless a decision made by Chun Dao is too outrageous, she will not refuse it. Then I'll go find someone tomorrow. The next day, when Xiao Hei's chirping sounded, Chen Dao also came out of the warm bed. He first brushed his teeth quickly with a willow branch, and then took out some food and sprinkled it on the ground to feed Xiao Hei. Chuckle. Xiao Hei happily pecked at the sorghum, unhulled sorghum, and rice bran on the ground. Chun Dao touched Xiao Hei's soft feathers, and then went to the chicken coop to observe the 6 white-feathered chickens. She actually laid an egg? Chen Dao looked at the 2 eggs under the chicken coop with some surprise, and felt happy. These 6 white-feathered chickens include 4 hens and 2 roosters, with 2 hens and 1 rooster in each chicken cage. Chen Dao did this so that the chickens could mate and hatch new chicks. Therefore, when Chun Dao saw eggs in the chicken coop, he was very surprised. I just don't know if these 2 eggs are fertilized. Chun Dao suddenly recalled some jokes he had seen on the internet in his previous life. One time, when Chun Dao was browsing Douyin, he saw a video about egg fertilization, and the comment section of that video really shocked Chen Dao. Because there are many people in the comment section who don't even know that eggs need to be fertilized before chicks can hatch, which shows that many people lack common sense. Chun Dao is naturally not the kind of person who lacks common sense, but he is not a professional chicken farmer, so he naturally cannot accurately determine whether these 2 eggs are fertilized eggs. Let's put it here and let the hen hatch it first. Chen Dao thought about it and decided not to take the 2 eggs away. Instead, he placed them under the hen and let the hen try to hatch them. After sprinkling enough grain as feed around the 2 chicken coops, Chun Dao returned to the house, took out the sumac flowers and chicken heartgrass, and prepared to make materials for raising yellow-feathered chickens. He put the sumac flowers and chicken heartgrass into a bowl, then took out a wooden stick with round ends and started pounding in the bowl. Soon, the sumac flowers and chicken heartgrass were crushed by Chun Dao and turned into a paste-like juice. Will chickens really eat this? Chun Dao hesitantly placed the bowl of juice next to the chicken coop. Chuckle. The white feathered chickens in the chicken coop made high-pitched cries, stuck their heads into the bowl, and pecked at the juice inside. Chen Dao felt relieved immediately after seeing this scene. It seems that there will be no problem with the yellow-feathered chicken's advancement. Chen Dao smiled. The description of the advancement to yellow-feathered chicken on the golden finger was very clear. He only needed to feed the white-feathered chicken a mixture of sappan flowers and chicken heartgrass for 3 days, and there would be a 90% chance that the white-feathered chicken would be advanced to a yellow-feathered chicken. Yellow-feathered chickens undoubtedly have more advantages than white-feathered chickens. Not only do they produce more meat, they also lay more eggs. If all 6 of these chickens can be upgraded to yellow-feathered chickens, then my family will probably never be short of eggs to eat in the future. Chapter 26: The Attraction of Eating. Xiao Dao, it's time to eat. Li Ping's voice was heard from inside the house, and Chen Dao immediately returned to the house to have breakfast with Li Ping and Qin Fei. Today's breakfast naturally couldn't be as sumptuous as last night's, but compared to the past, it could be considered a luxury. There was a bowl of white rice in front of the 3 of them. Although it seemed a bit bland, it was at least much better than the porridge they had eaten before. Chen Dao quickly finished the rice in his bowl, then stood up and said, "Mom, I'm going out to find someone to do something." Li Ping nodded. Then Chen Dao left the house and went straight to Chen Dao's house. "Brother Dao is here? Come over and have dinner with us." Seeing Chen Dao coming in, Hitsulian hurriedly and warmly invited Chen Dao to have dinner together. She had liked Chen Dao very much in the past, and she liked him even more now. After all, the secret recipe for raising white-feathered chickens provided by Chen Dao made her family's life better. When Chen Dao brought home a large pile of food yesterday, Hitsulian was completely shocked. Even though her family was the richest family in Qinjia village, they had never seen so much food. Not to mention that there are 50 kilograms of rice among these grains. With these foods, her man would no longer have to risk going into the mountains to hunt, and she would no longer have to worry all the time, fearing that something might happen to Chen Dao. For this reason, Hitsulian was extremely enthusiastic towards Chen Dao. Despite Chen Dao's refusal, she directly pulled Chen Dao to sit at her dining table. In other words, her family didn't have a daughter, otherwise Hitsulian would have considered becoming Chen Dao's relative. "No need, Auntie. I've already had breakfast." Chen Dao, who was pressed down on a chair by Hitsulian, waved his hands repeatedly to refuse. Hitsulian said enthusiastically, "It won't hurt to eat some more. Brother Dao will eat with your Uncle Chen." "That's really not necessary, Annie. I came here to discuss something with Uncle Chen." When Hitsulian heard that something was wrong with Chen Dao, her face immediately became serious, and she was about to pull Tai Dan to the next room to avoid it. "Auntie, there's no need to avoid this matter." Chen Dao stopped Hitsulian from avoiding him and said, "I came here to trouble Uncle Chen for something." "What's the matter?" Chen asked. "My family plans to rebuild the house." Chen Dao said directly, "We may need to stay at Uncle Chen's house for a while during the reconstruction period. I wonder, your family is renovating the house? That's a good thing." Before Chen Dao could finish, Hitsulian agreed immediately. "We have 2 vacant rooms. You, your mother, and Xiao Fei can come and stay anytime." After saying that, Hitsulian asked again, "Do you need your uncle to come over and help?" "Need not." Chen Dao said, "I can find enough manpower." "That won't work." Hitsulian shook her head and said, "Your uncle must go over and help. You're the only male in your family, and the villagers will inevitably look down on you, be cunning and sly, and not work hard. Your uncle must be there to keep them in check." Chen Dao thought about it, and it seemed to make sense, so he nodded and said, "Then I'll trouble you, uncle." "No trouble." Chen Dao waved his hand. He was happy to help Chen Dao. So, the matter was settled. As for the remuneration, Chen Dao did not mention it. Even if he mentioned it, Chen Dajio would not accept it, so it was better not to mention it. After politely declining Hitsulian's invitation to breakfast, Chen Dao left the Chen family and came to a dilapidated house. This house is not much better than Chen Dao's house. Even the gate seems to be shaking, as if it will be blown down by the strong wind at any time. From his original body's memory, Chen Dao knew that this was the home of Chen Cheng, one of the young men who helped yesterday. During the trip to the county town yesterday, the person who impressed Chen Dao the most was Chen Cheng. Chen Cheng was not only tall and strong, but also very enthusiastic in his work. Most importantly, through the memories of his original body, Chen Dao knew clearly that Chen Cheng's family was one of the most difficult families in the village. As long as he was willing to give him food, Chun Cheng would surely be willing to help his family with work. Thinking of this, Chen Dao walked forward and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" A somewhat muffled female voice came from the room. Chen Dao immediately responded, "I'm Chun Dao from Chun Ping's family. Could you please open the door, Aunt?" Squeak. The old door opened, revealing a woman with a slightly hunched figure behind the door. The woman's face was full of wrinkles, like traces of suffering, and she looked like a 60-year-old grandmother. But Chen Dao knew that the woman in front of him, Hien, was only about 40 years old. Looking like a 60-year-old at the age of 40 is the norm in this world and the most realistic portrayal of the poor. "Is it Brother Dao?" Lu Yin looked at Chun Dao with her cloudy eyes, and a kind smile appeared on her face. "Come in quickly. It's cold outside." "Okay, Aunt Lu." After stepping through the door, Chun Dao looked around, but saw that there was nothing in the front yard except a well. Lu Yin must have been drawing water just now, and there was a wooden bucket full of water next to the well. "Mom, who's here?" But at this moment, a burly figure walked out of the house. It was Chun Cheng. "Brother Dao." Chun Cheng's eyes lit up when he saw Chun Dao. "Why are you here?" "I need your help with something." "Let's talk inside." It was too cold outside, so Chun Cheng hurriedly led Chun Dao into the house. As for Lu Yin, she went to the kitchen, separated by a wall, to boil a cup of water for Chun Dao. This is the advantage of living at the foot of the vast mountain. The villagers of Qinjia village, who have no shortage of firewood, can even boil water to entertain guests. If they were in other villages, they would probably have to save even on firewood to boil water. "Brother Dao, what do you need my help with?" After entering the house, Chun Cheng immediately asked, "Do you need us to escort you into the city?" "No." Chen Dao shook his head and said, "I plan to ask you to help build a house." "Build a house? No problem." Chun Cheng said without hesitation, "Brother Dao, if you have any problems, I will definitely help you." Building a house is nothing more than doing some physical work, and what Chun Cheng lacks the least is strength. Thinking of Chun Dao's good deeds, he is naturally willing to help Chun Dao. "Brother Cheng, please listen to me first." Chun Dao said, "Since you're helping me build the house this time, I might not be able to pay you like I did yesterday. I can only provide you with meals every day, you see." "And provide meals?" Chun Cheng, who had originally planned to help Chun Dao with the work, suddenly brightened up his eyes. At the same time, Chun Shi and Chun Mu from the next room also rushed over, looking at Chun Dao with scorching eyes, and said, "Brother Dao, do you really get food if I help you build a house?" Facing the three people's scorching gazes, Chun Dao couldn't help but be stunned. He still underestimated the appeal of eating to the villagers of Qinjia village. Just the mere mention of providing meals caused the three adult males in Chun Cheng's family to react so. The allure of this meal was comparable to the high salary I received in my previous life, perhaps even more so. Chapter 27, The Heat in My Heart. "Brother Dao, do you really provide meals?" "Brother Dao, come on, speak up. Does helping your family with work really mean you get food?" Chun Shi and Chun Mu asked anxiously. It's no wonder they are so anxious, because eating is so important to them. If they could get meals by helping Chun Dao with his work, they could eat at Chun Dao's house, thus reducing the family's food consumption. This was undoubtedly an extremely important thing for Chun Cheng's family, whose food reserves had run out. Facing the anxious gazes of the three people, Chun Dao nodded. "Food is provided." After receiving a positive answer, Chun Cheng and the other two had a fiery light flashing in their eyes. After looking at each other, Chun Shi spoke first. "Brother Dao, can my third brother and I also go to your house to help?" Chun Mu scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, "Don't worry, Dao. Although we are not as strong as your eldest brother, we are very dedicated to our work and will definitely help you fix your house." Chun Dao looked at Chun Mu and Chun Shi. The two men had the standard body shape of the poor, a little thin and not as strong as Chun Cheng, but they should have no problem doing some heavy work. So Chun Dao nodded and said, "Okay, very good." Chun Cheng and the other two were so excited that they almost jumped up and danced. Lu Yin, who was boiling water in the kitchen next door, also had a smile on her face. It was undoubtedly a great joy for this poor family that her three sons could find jobs and eat at Chun Dao's house. In this way, the family's stored food could be used to feed the children. "Brother Dao, when do we start working?" Chun Shi asked impatiently. "Norus," Chun Dao replied. "I still need to find some help, so I can't start work until tomorrow. You could just come over tomorrow morning." "Ugh." Chun Chang assured him seriously, "Don't worry, Dower. We will definitely come to your house on time to help you tomorrow. Then I'll be leaving first." Without waiting for Lu Yan to bring hot water, Chun Dao left Chun Chang's house and went to ask Chun Si and Chun Jiang for help. Chun Si and Chun Jiang's families were not as poor as Chun Chang's, but after hearing that Chun Dao was willing to provide them with meals, they still agreed. At this point, the 5 people who were building the house had been recruited. Chun Dao also returned home and discussed with Li Ping about temporarily moving into the Chun family's home. Moving to the Chun family's house? That's fine. After listening to Chun Dao's story, Li Ping nodded. This world is just like ancient China, with strict separation between men and women, but it is only limited to wealthy families. Poor families would not think so much. It is a simple truth. How can they have the time to think about these things when they can't even get enough food to eat? Therefore, after hearing Chun Dao say that he wanted to live at Chen's house for a while, Li Ping hesitated for a moment and then agreed. So, Chun Dao's family started the relocation, moving all the useful items at home to Chen's house. Of course, the most important thing was to move the most important property in the family: food and chickens raised in the front yard. The next day, before it was fully light, Chunda opened his eyes. After waking up Chun Shi and Chen Mu next to them, the 3 of them walked out of the house together. "It's really cold today." Chen Mu wrapped his clothes tightly around him, feeling the biting cold wind, and his face was almost frozen. However, the coldness on his body could not reduce the passion in Chen Mu's heart at all. He had already begun to imagine the day when he could have a full meal at Chun Dao's house. "Hurry up, don't waste time." Chun Chang said, "Brother Dao is willing to give us enough food to eat, so we can't delay Brother Dao's business." Upon hearing this, Chen Mu and Chun Shi hurriedly quickened their pace and headed towards Chun Dao's home. Because the distance was not far, the 3 of them quickly saw Chun Dao's house. At this time, Chun Si and Chun Jiang were standing in front of the door. "Brother Chung, you're here too?" When Chun Jiang and Chun Si saw Chun Chung and the other 2, they hurried forward to greet them. Chun Chung scratched his head and said with a simple smile, "Brother Dao said he would provide meals, so the 3 of us brothers came to help." After that, Chun Chung asked again, "Are you 2 here to help too?" "Certainly." Chun Jiang nodded, then looked at Chun Dao's house and said, "Brother Dao, this house really needs to be rebuilt. It's really hard to survive this winter in such a dilapidated house." As soon as these words were spoken, Chun Chung and the other 2 fell silent. The situation of their house was no different from that of Chun Dao's. It was okay now, but it would probably be even more difficult to endure in winter. "You guys came so early?" But at this moment, a voice came from behind them. Chun Dao and Chunda walked over side by side, looking surprised as if they had not expected these 5 people to be so proactive. "It's getting late." Chun Chung smiled innocently and said, "The sun is almost up. Dower, shall we start working now?" "No hurry, eat first." When Chun Dao said this, the eyes of Chun Chung and the other 2 lit up immediately. They thought to themselves that Dao Ge was really honest. He hadn't even done the work yet, but he was already eating. Chun Si and Chun Jiang also looked expectant. Although their desire to eat was not as strong as Chun Chung and the other 2, it was good to save some food at home. "Dinner is here." At this time, Li Ping and Hitilian came over carrying a large wooden barrel, which was filled with mushy food, steaming in the cold weather. "It smells so good." Chun Shi couldn't help but touch his lower abdomen. The aroma of food made him swallow his saliva involuntarily. Chun Chang's abdomen could be heard rumbling. He was a strong man and ate a lot, but because of his family's financial difficulties, he hadn't had a full meal in a long time. When he smelled the aroma of the porridge, he suddenly felt hungry. "Come over and eat." Hearing the noise, Li Ping smiled and took out bowls to serve rice to everyone. The meal made from sorghum flour mixed with rice bran was naturally not delicious, and it was even a bit irritating to the throat, but for Chun Chung and his companions, it was already a rare food. Chun Chung took the bowl and drank the porridge in one gulp without thinking it was too hot. Then he said a little embarrassedly, "Auntie, can you give me another bowl?" "Eat as much as you want." Chun Dao said, "But one thing you have to remember is that you can only eat it here and cannot take it home." Due to the difficult situation at Chun Chang's home, it was difficult to guarantee that they would not secretly bring food home, so Chun Dao still needed to take precautions in advance. "Thank you, Brother Dao." Chun Ching quickly assured him, "Don't worry, Dower, we definitely won't take her home." Chun Shi and Chun Mu also made a promise, saying that they would never do such immoral things. As for Chun Si and Chun Jiang, there is no need to worry about the two of them. The situation at their home is relatively good, and they would not do something like secretly bringing food back home. Besides, Chunda was watching nearby, so no one dared to do such a thing. P.S. Please give me a good review, and I will give you some free gifts. Thank you. Chapter 28, The Villagers' Onlookers. Brother Chung, eat more so you can have the strength to work later. Li Ping smiled and added another bowl to Qin Chung. Qin Chung took the bowl and gulped it down in one gulp. Another bowl. Another bowl. Another bowl. Qin Cheng's appetite was quite big. He ate nearly half of a large bucket of rice porridge by himself before putting down his bowl with a feeling of being unsatisfied. In fact, he could have eaten some more, but the porridge in the wooden barrel was almost gone. He couldn't ask Li Ping and He Tzuilian to cook more, right? Although he didn't eat his fill, Chun Chung was very satisfied. He couldn't eat like that at home. Brother Chung, your big belly. Chunda said half-jokingly, I don't know how your mother raised you. Everyone nodded in agreement when they heard this. Qin Cheng's appetite was extraordinary. It was hard to imagine how Lu Yin, a widow, had managed to raise him and 5 other children to this day. Hey. Chun Chung smiled innocently, not caring about Chun Da's teasing. Instead, he turned to Chin Dao and said, Brother Dao, now that we're full, should we start working? It was a rare opportunity to eat until he was 70% full. Chun Ching now felt full of energy and couldn't wait to start working. Brother Dao, we are full now. Please give us some work. Brothers Chen Shi and Chen Mu also spoke up and showed a positive attitude. You have to be proactive. You finally find a job that can feed yourself. If you lose it because of laziness, the loss will be huge. Chen Dao took a look at his dilapidated house and said, Let's tear it down first. We can save the good wood for building a new house and use the bad wood as firewood. Good. Everyone answered in unison and then started to work. Chun Dao quietly watched the 5 busy people for a while, then said to Chunda, Uncle, please keep an eye on it for me. I'm going back to do something. Go. Shengda nodded. When I returned to Chunda's house, I saw the 2 little guys, Chun Fei and Chun Taidan, playing with Xiao He in the front yard. Xiao He was running in front with a giggle, and the 2 little kids were chasing him with smiles on their faces, as if they were tireless. Crossing the front yard, Chun Dao entered the room where he was staying temporarily, took out the sumac flowers and chicken heartgrass, mixed them together, and mashed them into juice, then went to the front yard with a bowl of juice to feed the chickens. Chun Dao first placed the bowl between the 2 chicken coops. After the 6 chickens had finished the juice in the bowl, he sprinkled some food on the side of the chicken coop and let the 6 white-feathered chickens eat. Then Chun Dao waved to Xiao He and said, Xiao He, come here. When Xiao He heard Chun Dao's voice, he immediately abandoned his 2 little playmates, ran towards Chun Dao happily, and stroked Chun Dao's calves with the feathers on his neck. Brother Dao. Chun Fei and Chun Taidan also ran over to greet Chun Dao. Xiao Fei Taidan. Chun Dao smiled and patted the 2 children's heads. Go play. Brother has things to do. The 2 children ran away quickly. Chun Dao took out a pound of sorghum and a pound of wheat bran from the house to feed Xiao He. Chuckle. Xiao He is also a gluttonous chicken. Once he gets food, he forgets his owner and happily pecks at the old rice and the food scattered on the ground. It's true that once you have food, you forget your master. Chun Dao smiled and shook his head, then walked to the chicken coop and observed the 2 eggs in it. Chun Dao had some understanding of the incubation time of eggs. Generally speaking, it takes about 20 days to incubate an egg. At this time, the 2 eggs in the chicken coop had only been incubated for 1 day. It was obviously impossible for any chicks to hatch. 20 days is still too long, and Chun Dao looked at the white-feathered chickens with yellow feathers in the chicken coop. According to his previous experience in upgrading chickens, these 6 chickens would probably be upgraded to yellow-feathered chickens the day after tomorrow. In this case, it would be not worthwhile to hatch the eggs of white-feathered chickens. Instead of hatching white-feathered chicken eggs, it's better to wait until the white-feathered chickens advance to yellow-feathered chickens before hatching them. Thinking of this, Chun Dao immediately reached into the chicken coop and took out 2 eggs from under a hen. Just use these 2 eggs as a dinner snack. Chun Dao put 2 eggs in his room, planning to take them out and cook them as a snack in the evening. Then he left the Chun family and returned to his own construction site to help with some work within his ability. The sun gradually rose higher and the weather became slightly warmer. Many villagers who heard the noise came out of their homes and came to Chun Dao's house to watch the excitement. "What is Daojer doing? Why did they tear down the house?" An old man asked as he looked at Chun Dao and others who were busy. I know. One woman, unable to contain her curiosity, said, "Brother Dao's family is planning to tear down the house and rebuild it." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd watching couldn't help but gasp. In this day and age, we can't even get enough to eat, and yet Brother Dao's family can afford to build a house. With this money, we could buy more food instead of building a house. What if Brother Dao has too much food to eat? It's no wonder that the villagers were so shocked. Building a house is really too rare these days. When every household is unable to get enough food, building a house is not an urgent need for the villagers, no matter how dilapidated their house is. You guys don't know shit. The woman who had spoken earlier rolled her eyes and said, "Brother Dao's family isn't short of food at all. I heard that Brother Chung and his family are given food to eat when they come to help, and they're even full. Free meals." As soon as these words were spoken, all the onlookers looked at him with envy without exception. "Do you really provide meals? And do you ensure you're full?" "Yes." "Did Brother Dao's family strike gold? They're so rich." Brother Dao's family is incredibly wealthy. Not only do they provide meals, they even provide food to the hungry stomach. That big-bellied Chin Chung, won't he make Dao's family bankrupt? It's better to ask me for help than to ask the 3 Chun Chung brothers. I eat much less than them. The onlookers' eyes were green with envy. In Chun Dao's opinion, a job that only provided food was no different from exploiting labor. But in the eyes of the villagers, this job was simply the best. They only need to do some hard work to have enough food every day and save a lot of food for the family. They would never dare to dream of such a good thing. For the villagers, strength is something that can be restored by sleeping, so it is not worth anything at all. But working for Chun Dao means they can really have enough to eat. Looking at Chun Chung and others busy on the construction site, the villagers' eyes were full of envy, and they wished they could replace Chun Chung. "No, I have to go ask Brother Dao if he needs any help." Chapter 29, Golden Feather Chicken and Blood Feather Chicken. A young man ran up to Chun Dao, who was carrying wood blocks, and asked flatteringly, "Brother Dao, do you need help building your house?" Well, Chun Dao took a look at this person and found his name from his original body's memory, Chun Xiaogo. "It's Brother Go." Chun Dao smiled and said, "I don't need any help for now. If I need any help in the future, I will definitely look for you, Brother Go, first." After hearing what Chun Dao said, Chun Xiaogo felt embarrassed to continue and left with his head hung. As for the villagers who were watching, they had no intention of leaving. Instead, they looked at the busy Chun Chung and others with great interest, their faces full of envy. As the sun sets, Chun Chung and others, who have been busy for the day, pile up the dismantled wood and then lean on the pile to wait for their meal. "I'm so tired." Chun Shi wiped the sweat from his forehead. After a busy day, even a strong guy like him felt very tired. Fortunately, he had a full meal in the morning, so he could still hold on. "I think it's okay." Chun Chung grinned and said, "I had a full meal this morning, so I'm not particularly tired now." Chun Shi, Chen Mu, Chen Si, Chun Jiang. A few people took a look at Chun Cheng's physique, which was as strong as a calf, and agreed with what he said. With Chun Cheng's physique, this kind of physical work is a piece of cake for him. Of course, the prerequisite is that he can have enough food to eat. Dinner is here. Speaking of food, it's coming soon. Li Ping and He Tzulian came over carrying a large wooden barrel. As they approached, the unique aroma of food wafted out. Chun Chung swallowed his saliva, and his eyes lit up. "Come and eat." Li Ping also knew that everyone must be very hungry after working all day, so she didn't waste any time and directly took out bowls and served rice to everyone. Chun Chung quickly took the bowl and devoured the flour paste mixed with rice bran in one gulp. He then exhaled and said, "Comfortable." Chun Cheng's 2 younger brothers also gulped down the porridge in one gulp, like starving ghosts, and then handed the bowl to Li Ping. "Annie, please give me another bowl." "Good." Li Ping smiled and served another bowl to each of the 3 brothers. Although Chun Chung and the other 2 are brothers from the same mother, their appetites are different. Even if Chun Shi and Chun Mu are very hungry, 3 bowls of rice will be enough for them. Chun Chung, a well-deserved pot-belly man, drank 8 bowls in a row before stopping. When he returned the bowl to Li Ping, he smiled and said, "Thank you, Annie." "You are welcome." Seeing that the 3 had finished eating, Li Ping waved her hand and left with He Zulian carrying the wooden barrel. After the two left, it was getting dark. Chen Dao immediately said to Chen Sheng and the others, "That's all for today. Everyone go home." "Let's go home." After a full meal, Chen Sheng happily led his two younger brothers home. As if worried that there would be no work tomorrow, he turned back and said to Chen Dao as they walked, "Brother Dao, let's come back tomorrow." Chen Dao nodded, watched them leave, and said to Chen Da, "Uncle, let's go back and eat." "Good." When they returned to Chen Da's home, Li Ping and He Zulian had already prepared dinner for the night. Chen Taidan and Chun Fei were sitting at the table waiting for the meal to start. "Are you back?" Seeing the two men come back, He Zulian hurriedly invited them to the table. After everyone took their seats, Chen Dao took a look at the food on the table. At this time, in front of each person on the table was a bowl of white rice and a pot of egg drop soup, which was made with the 2 eggs that Chen Dao had collected this morning. Chun Fei and Chun Taidan looked at the egg drop soup frequently and swallowed their saliva. "Eat it all." Chen Dao smiled, picked up the white rice, and started cooking. He Zulian took out a few small bowls, distributed a bowl of egg drop soup to each person, and asked everyone to eat with the egg drop soup. After the meal, the two women cleaned up the dishes in the kitchen, while Chun Dao returned to his room first, lying on the bed with a blank look in his eyes. 2 days passed in a flash. When Chen Dao woke up that day, he received good news. The white-feathered chicken had successfully advanced. Chen Dao, standing next to the chicken coop in the front yard, looked at the 6 chickens in the coop with a happy expression. However, the 6 chickens in the chicken coop that were originally covered with white feathers had changed drastically. Their feathers had all turned into an orange-yellow color, and their bodies had also become a little bigger. Chen Dao estimated that these 6 yellow-feathered chickens that had successfully advanced weighed at least 7 to 8 kilograms. In addition, Chen Dao's eyes also showed the advancement information of the yellow-feathered chicken. Yellow-feathered chickens have the following characteristics: short growth period, high meat production, and short egg-laying cycle. Yellow-feathered chicken advanced Route 1. Combine a yellow-feathered chicken, female, with an iron-clawed chicken, male, to hatch a golden-feathered chicken with a 50% chance. Golden-feathered chicken features: long growth cycle, strong combat power, comparable to that of an 8th-grade warrior. Yellow-feathered chicken advancement Route 2. Feed the chicken blood-clotting fruit for 3 consecutive days to advance to a blood-feathered chicken. Blood-feathered chicken features: small size, chicken meat, and chicken blood can strengthen qi and blood. Golden-feathered chicken and blood-feathered chicken. A gleam of light flashed in Chen Dao's eyes. Just by reading the introduction of these 2 chicken breeds, one could feel how powerful they were. The golden feather chicken is comparable to an 8th-grade warrior and is even more powerful than Xiao He. Although the introduction of blood feather chicken was a bit vague, Chen Dao noticed its characteristic of strengthening qi and blood. You know, the warriors in this world mainly cultivate qi and blood. In addition to accumulating qi and blood bit by bit through practicing exercises, the fastest way to strengthen qi and blood is to nourish qi and blood with various precious medicinal materials and strengthen yourself. And those medicinal herbs that can help warriors strengthen their qi and blood are all extremely expensive, and even wealthy families can't afford them. In other words, Chen Dao's eyes gleamed. Is the effect of the blood feather chicken similar to those precious medicinal herbs that strengthen qi and blood? Or even comparable to the flesh and blood of demon beasts? Chen Dao's heart was ablaze with excitement. Chicken could strengthen qi and blood, so that meant, is it almost the same as a monster? The monsters in this world are extremely precious, even more precious than the medicinal herbs that strengthen qi and blood. The reason is that monster meat is difficult to hunt. But the flesh and blood of monsters can help warriors strengthen qi and blood, shorten the training time, and the effect is even better than those precious medicinal herbs. Therefore, the monsters in this world are extremely precious. Whenever they appear, they will definitely attract a large number of warriors to buy them. The next level of advancement for the yellow-feathered chicken is the blood-feathered chicken, a monster-like creature. The blood-feathered chicken is probably worth as much as a demon beast. Chen Dao made his own judgment with certainty. Of course, Chen Dao also knew that due to its size, the value of a single blood-feather chicken could definitely not be compared with that of a monster. But the advantage of blood-feather chicken is that it is livestock and can be cultivated in batches. Unlike monsters, You don't need to rely on luck to encounter them. And sometimes you even have to sacrifice your life to hunt them. Chapter 30 Super High Egg Laying Rate. Golden Feathered Chicken, Blood Feathered Chicken. Chun Dao muttered the names of these two chicken breeds, and an extreme desire surged in his heart. The golden feathered chicken is comparable to an 8th grade warrior. If it can be cultivated, then one's own safety will be completely worry-free. After all, even in the county, the most powerful warrior is only of the 7th rank. Although the golden feathered chicken cannot defeat a 7th rank warrior, as long as there are enough of them, they can kill a 7th rank warrior. As for the blood feather chicken, there is no need to say more. As long as the blood feather chickens, which have the same function as monsters, can be cultivated and sold to the warriors in the county, Chun Dao will immediately make a fortune. The situation at home will also change dramatically, and eating meat every meal will probably be possible immediately. Unfortunately, I have never heard of these two advanced materials. Chun Dao sighed. To reach the level of golden feather chicken, one needs iron claw chicken. Chun Dao had never even heard of this chicken breed, let alone obtained it. As for the blood-clotting fruit needed for the blood feather chicken to advance, there is no such thing as a blood-clotting fruit in the original body's memory. It seems I can only ask around next time I go into town. Chun Dao sighed and was about to go out, but saw Li Ping and Itulian coming out of the kitchen carrying a wooden barrel. Mom, Aunt, is the meal ready? Chun Dao stopped and asked. It's done. Li Ping nodded, then frowned and said, Dower, we've been consuming a lot of food recently. Originally, Chun Dao estimated that hiring someone to help build a house would only consume about 10 kilograms of food per day. But it was not until the construction of the house began that Li Ping discovered that the food consumption was far greater than Chun Dao's estimation. Nowadays, the daily food consumption is more than 20 kilograms, which has caused the family's food reserves to be consumed at a doubled rate. It's okay, Mom, Chun Dao said. We still have plenty of food at home. We won't run out of it in a short while. But Li Ping was still a little worried and said, if this continues, I'm afraid our family won't have enough food to last until the house is built. The food that Chun Dao brought back last time, in addition to white rice, included 450 kilograms of sorghum flour and rice bran. Based on a daily food consumption of 20 kilograms, it was impossible to last for a month. What's more, it's not just Chun Chung and his 5 colleagues who need to consume food, but also the chickens raised at home. Uncle Chun and I will go to the county town in a couple of days and bring back some food. All right. Seeing that Chun Dao knew what was going on, Li Ping put aside her worries, carried the wooden barrel, and went to the construction site with Chun Dao. At the construction site, Chun Chung and his 5 companions, plus Chun Da, a total of 6 people, were sitting under a tree to avoid the cold wind. When they saw Chun Dao and his 2 companions coming with wooden barrels, Chun Chung and his companions all showed anticipation in their eyes. For Chun Chung and the other 2, working at Chun Dao's house these few days was like living in heaven. In the past, they could only eat until they were 5 points full or even 3 points full, but now they can eat until their bellies are full every day. The 3 brothers Chun Chung wished they could live like this forever. Dinner is ready, Li Ping shouted, and Chun Chung and the other 4 immediately stepped forward, took the bowls and started drinking. After finishing 8 bowls of porridge in a row, Chun Chung couldn't wait to ask, Brother Dao, are we going to start building the house today? Certainly, Chun Dao nodded. After a few days of busy work, the old house had been completely demolished. Even the fence had been taken down. Now looking around, there was only a flat land left. It was time to build a house. Brother Dao, Chun Da asked aloud, how do you plan to build this house? Chun Dao thought for a moment and replied, the house doesn't need to be too big. 3 rooms and a kitchen will be enough. But it needs a front yard and a backyard, and the backyard must be bigger. The 3-room layout is designed to allow Chun Fei, Li Ping, and Chun Dao to have 1 room each. As for the front yard and backyard, they are naturally for raising chickens. Chun Dao knew that he would have more and more chickens in the future, so the yard for raising chickens had to be big enough. I see. Chun nodded and immediately made arrangements. Brother Chung, you are quite strong. Come with me to cut wood, and the other 3 will be responsible for building the house. No problem. Everyone agreed happily and started to get busy. Chun Da and Chun Chung were responsible for cutting down trees. 1 was responsible for transporting trees, and the remaining 3 were responsible for building houses. The entire construction site was full of enthusiasm. As the sun rose higher, Many villagers came out of their homes and gathered not far away to watch the excitement. Is Daojur's family going to start building a house? Of course it is. The old house has been demolished, and now it's time to start building the new house. Brother Dao's family is really rich. I've seen the meals they provide to Chun Chung and his men, and every meal consists of sorghum noodles. The three Chun Chung brothers are really paying the bills. They eat sorghum noodles every day, and they live better than the landlords. It's a pity that Daojur's family is no longer short of manpower. By the way, where does Brother Dao get so much food? Brother Dao is capable and can find food, unlike you, who sit idle all day and just sit at home waiting for food. Amid the villagers' envious and admiring gazes, Chun Dao returned to the Chun family home and fell into deep thought as he looked at the 6 yellow-feathered chickens in the chicken coop. But at this moment, Chun Dao's eyes focused, and he noticed the eggs under a hen. Chun Dao quickly reached into the cage, pushed the hen aside, and picked up all the eggs, his face full of surprise. It just advanced to a yellow-feathered chicken, and it laid 3 eggs. Chun Dao looked at the 3 eggs in his hand and was extremely surprised. He knew that yellow-feathered chickens were good at laying a lot of eggs, but he didn't expect that yellow-feathered chickens were so powerful that they laid 3 eggs right after they completed the advancement. Chuckle. But at this moment, a hen in the cage began to cluck. Chun Dao looked over and saw the hen clucking for a while, and then a bright yellow egg rolled out from under the hen. Good fellow. Chun Dao was completely shocked this time. The egg-laying frequency of this yellow-feathered chicken is really extraordinary. It's been less than a day, and they've already laid 4 eggs. On average, each yellow-feathered hen lays 1 egg. If they continue to lay eggs at this rate, won't our family never have to worry about having no eggs to eat in the future? Chun Dao looked delighted, but instead of putting the 4 eggs away, he put them back into the chicken coop. Yellow-feathered chickens lay eggs so frequently. Will they hatch faster? Chun Dao stuffed the egg back under the hen while thinking about this question and went back to the house to eat the breakfast that Li Ping and He Civilian had already prepared. Chapter 31, Unscientific Hatching Speed. After breakfast, Chun Dao returned to his room, found all the copper coins, and counted them. That's over 500 copper coins in total. This amount isn't enough to buy food. Do I have to sell some yellow-feathered chickens? Chun Dao couldn't help but have a headache. To be fair, he didn't really want to sell the yellow-feathered chickens, but hoped to keep these 6 yellow-feathered chickens and let them reproduce stably at home. In this way, Chun Dao would not have to buy gray-feathered chickens from the city every time and then go through 2 upgrades to get yellow-feathered chickens. But now the food at home is being consumed too quickly. If Chun Dao doesn't sell the yellow-feathered chickens, he really doesn't know where to raise money to go to the city to buy food. I hope the yellow-feathered chicken eggs can hatch soon. Chun Dao sighed softly and could only hope that the yellow-feathered chickens would hatch chicks faster. In a flash, another 3 days passed. The first thing Chun Dao did when he woke up in the morning was to check the chicken coop. The 4 yellow-feathered hens in the cage did not disappoint Chun Dao. They laid eggs very frequently, laying 1 egg every day. Chun Dao did not take any of the eggs away, but left them in the cage for the hens to try to hatch them. Now the first batch of eggs has been incubating for 5 days. Chun Dao is eager to hatch new little yellow-feathered chickens so that he can sell a few yellow-feathered chickens without any worries. I don't know if the hatching was successful today. Although he knew that it was unlikely to hatch successfully within 5 days, Chun Dao still looked at the chicken coop seriously with a glimmer of hope. Chun Dao's gaze suddenly froze, and a look of ecstasy gradually crept onto his face. In the chicken coop at this time, in addition to the 6 adult yellow-feathered chickens that should have been there were 3 more furry little chicks. A little chick with orange-yellow feathers looked around curiously. Its eyes seemed full of curiosity and surprise about the world. Chi-chi-chi. The other 2 chicks pecked at the broken eggshells to replenish their nutrition. Great! Hatching was successful. Chun Dao was both surprised and shocked. 3 little chicks actually hatched in just 5 days. This was really unscientific. However, Chun Dao felt relieved when he thought that this was a world with extraordinary creatures, such as warriors and monsters. Besides, such a bizarre thing as traveling through time has happened, so hatching chicks in 5 days doesn't seem to be anything surprising. Chun Dao reached into the cage, scooped up the 3 chicks into his palm, and carefully identified the genders of the 3 chicks. It was finally confirmed that the 3 chicks were 2 hens and 1 rooster. With these 3 chicks, I could selectively sell a few adult yellow-feathered chickens. Chun Dao put the chicks back into the cage, returned to the house to get food to feed Xiao Hei and the yellow-feathered chickens in the cage. After feeding the chickens, Chun Dao had breakfast and went straight to his own construction site. The construction site was still bustling with activity. After several days of hard work by Chun Sheng and others, the foundation had been laid and the main structure of the house was now under construction. Not far from the construction site, there were groups of villagers watching the excitement. The construction site of Chun Dao's family has now become the only place for villagers to watch the excitement. Whenever the sun rises higher and the weather gets a little warmer, the villagers in the village who have no entertainment activities and cannot farm will come out of their homes and gather nearby to watch the excitement. Of course, while watching the fun, they couldn't help but discuss a lot, and the most talked about topic was the meals that Chun Dao provided to Chun Sheng and other helpers. I came early today and saw the food Chun Sheng and his friends were eating. It was really sorghum noodles, enough to fill you up. Isn't this Dao Gur too rich? He's actually willing to feed sorghum noodles to these big-bellied men like Chun Sheng. When I first saw Dao Gur, his father thought he was extraordinary. I never thought his son would be so capable. I really want to help Brother Dao's family. They only eat sorghum noodles every day, which is something even the landlords in the city can't afford. Yes, Brother Dao is really capable. Antly can finally live a good life. With such a capable son, she can enjoy a happy life in the future. Isn't it? I wish my son could be as capable as Dao Gur. Don't count on your son who works half an hour on the farm and then starts panting and slacking off. That is. Chun Dao ignored the onlookers and went straight to Chun Da, who had just been carrying wood with Chun Sheng, and said straight to the point, "Uncle, let's stop working for a day tomorrow." Before Chun Da could say anything, Chun Sheng called out in surprise, "Brother Dao, are you not going to build a house anymore? Is it because we eat too much? Can we eat less in the future?" It's no wonder that Chun Sheng reacted so strongly. The opportunity to work for Chun Dao was really too rare. During the few days that he worked for Chun Dao, Chun Sheng had one of the few good days where he could eat his fill every day. If Chun Dao stopped building the house, his good days would be gone forever. "Don't worry, Chengji." Chun Dao smiled and said, "It's just a one-day stoppage, not a complete halt to construction." Hearing this, Chun Sheng scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, "I thought we ate too much, and you didn't have enough food at home, Brother Dao." "Don't worry, Brother Cheng. There's enough food at home." Chun Dao comforted Chun Sheng and then said to Chun Da, "Uncle, I plan to go to the city tomorrow." Sheng Da nodded. Chun Dao had told him a few days ago that he was going to the city, so he wasn't surprised. He just said, "Do you need us to come with you?" "Certainly," Chun Dao replied. "Not only you, Uncle, but Chun Sheng and the others will also have to go together. After all, the road is not safe." Although Chun Dao had not left the village during this period, he knew that there were more and more refugees on the official road. A few days ago, some refugees even tried to enter Chinjia village. Fortunately, the village chief Chun he reacted immediately and led the young and strong people in the village to drive away the refugees, preventing them from breaking into the village and causing chaos. "So, Brother Dao, you want us to follow you to the city?" Chun Sheng smiled innocently and said, "No problem. Dao, whatever you say, we'll go there. I'll do as you say." Today, Chun Sheng has complete trust in Chun Dao. In his opinion, Chun Dao is the best person to him in the entire Chinjia village and the only one who can provide him with enough food. "Then, Uncle, tell Jiangger and the others later, and we'll go into the city together tomorrow." Become. After finishing the conversation, Chun Dao stayed on the construction site to work with Chun Da and others. Of course, with Chun Dao's frail body, there was only so much he could do. The most he could do was help carry some lighter wood. Chapter 32. Testing. Dinner is here. At sunset, Li Ping and He Zuilian came over carrying rice buckets. As the aroma of food wafted over, Chun Sheng and others immediately stopped what they were doing and walked towards Li Ping and the others. Even the villagers who were watching the excitement nearby couldn't help swallowing. This sorghum flour tastes so delicious. A young man who was watching the fun sniffed the fragrance in the air and swallowed his saliva violently. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he had eaten such a precious food as sorghum flour. Others also sniffed their noses, as if they wanted to inhale all the fragrance in the air into their stomachs. Damn it, I haven't eaten sorghum noodles in ages. Me too. Chun Chung and his fellow pot-bellied men are so lucky. I want to eat sorghum noodles every day too. That sorghum flour has rice bran in it. It must not taste good. Facing the envious gazes of the villagers, Chun Chung and others came to the rice bucket, took the bowls handed over by Li Ping and He Tzulian, and began to eat in big mouthfuls. Chun Chung was still the most active eater. After eating 8 bowls in a row, he returned the bowl to Li Ping and let out a long sigh. Chun Jiang looked at Chun Dao and asked, "Brother Dao, are we going into the city tomorrow?" "Yes." Chun Jiang's eyes suddenly lit up when he got a positive answer. Chun Si also said happily, "It's good to go into the city." Chun Jiang and Chun Si were deeply impressed by the prosperity of the county town. They were particularly fond of the county town. If conditions allowed, they would have liked to go to the county town to play every day. "Look how happy you two are." Chunda shook his head and said, "Let's all go back. Gather here tomorrow and go to the county town together." Soon, all 5 of them left. Chun Dao returned to Chun Da's home with Chunda, Li Ping, and He Tzulian. The meal prepared by Li Ping and He Tzulian in advance was already placed on Chen's dining table. Today's meal was very simple, with only 1 bowl of white rice per person. However, even white rice is a rare delicacy for everyone, so not only do they not show any disgust, but they eat it up voraciously. Only Chun Dao, looking at the white rice in the bowl, had no appetite at all. Chun Dao, who had lived in modern China for more than 20 years, had no appetite for the extremely monotonous food in front of him. However, Chun Dao also knew that he had to eat, otherwise he would not grow and would not have the strength, so he had to force himself to swallow the rice in the bowl. After dinner, the 2 children went back to the house to rest. Chunda looked at Chun Dao and asked, "Brother Dao, are you going into the city to buy food tomorrow?" Chun Dao nodded. "Yes, uncle." Chunda frowned and asked, "Do you still have money?" "There's still several hundred." "What can a few hundred copper coins do?" Chunda said, "The food in the county town is so expensive now. Chun Dao's few hundred coins can only buy a few dozen kilograms of food at most. It is of no use at all. I'm going to sell some chickens." "Selling chickens?" Chunda was stunned for a moment and said, "Don't you want to hatch more chickens?" "How can you hatch more chickens if you sell them?" "It has hatched successfully." Chun Dao smiled and said, "Today my chickens have successfully hatched 3 chicks." "What?" Chun Dao was stunned. He knew that Chun Dao had bred yellow-feathered chickens. After all, Chun Dao's chickens were raised in his front yard. However, Chun Dao had no intention of delving into the secret recipe of yellow-feathered chickens. He was already satisfied to get the secret recipe for breeding white-feathered chickens. He didn't want the secret recipe for yellow-feathered chickens as well. He also knew that the yellow-feathered chickens raised by Chun Dao laid eggs very quickly and could lay 4 eggs a day. But what he never expected was, this egg will hatch so quickly. Although Chun Dao is a hunter, he also knows that it takes a long time to hatch eggs. For example, it takes at least 25 days to hatch a chick of gray-feathered chicken. The incubation time for Chun Dao's yellow-feathered chickens is only 5 days. Hatching a batch of chicks in 5 days was something Chun Dao had never heard of. "Is it really hatched?" Chun Dao asked in disbelief. It was not that he did not trust Chun Dao, but the fact that hatching could be successful in 5 days was simply too abnormal. "Really? Uncle, come with me." Chun Dao brought Chun Dao to their own chicken coop in the front yard. With the candlelight coming from the house, they could just barely see 3 chicks in the coop keeping warm under the hen's wings. Seeing this scene, Chun Dao finally believed what Chun Dao said. "It's incredible." Chun Dao took a deep breath and said, "It only takes 5 days to hatch a batch of eggs." "Brother Dao, could it be that your chicken is a fairy chicken sent from heaven?" "How was that possible?" Chun Dao shook his head and laughed, but he didn't think Chun Dao was making a fuss. In fact, when he saw the 3 chicks in the morning, Chun Dao's performance was not much better than Chun Dao's, and was even worse. After a long while, Chun Dao's calmed down the shock in his heart. As he walked back to the house with Chun Dao, he lowered his voice and said, "Brother Dao, please don't reveal your method of raising yellow-feathered chickens to others, otherwise you will bring about a fatal disaster." Chun Dao was well aware of the value of these yellow-feathered chickens. They laid eggs quickly and hatched quickly. It was no exaggeration to say that such a chicken breed was priceless. Once others knew that Chun Dao had a method to cultivate this kind of chicken, I'm afraid that fatal disaster is just around the corner. "Uncle, I know the seriousness of the matter. Chun Dao nodded and said, Uncle, do you want to learn how to raise yellow-feathered chickens? To be honest, I do want to. Chunda said sincerely, this chicken is so magical. It only takes a few moments of cultivation to achieve extraordinary wealth. How could I not want it? After that, Chunda continued, but I'm not a greedy person. The method of raising white-feathered chickens is enough. As for the method of raising yellow-feathered chickens, you can keep it for yourself. Of course, Chunda wanted to obtain the method of breeding yellow-feathered chickens. After all, this method meant huge wealth. However, compared with wealth, he cared more about Chun Dao's safety. Such a precious secret method, the more people know about it, the greater the risk of it being leaked. Chunda would never allow Chun Dao's family to be in danger because of himself. All right. Chun Dao looked at Chunda deeply. This was also a test for Chunda. He wanted to know whether Chunda could maintain his kindness towards his family in front of the yellow-feathered chicken. The result of this test undoubtedly made Chun Dao very satisfied. Chunda is still the same Chunda. His kindness towards his family comes from the heart and will not change because of any interests, even if that interest is enough to make his family rich and live like a landlord. Then I'll go back and rest first. Go. Remember, don't tell anyone about the yellow-feathered chicken's method. Chapter 33. Surface Work. The next day, the sky was just getting light. The Chun family became busy. The two women were cooking breakfast in the kitchen, while Chun Dao and Chunda were responsible for feeding the chickens. Shichichi. As soon as he arrived at the chicken coop, Chun Dao heard the crowing of chicks and saw that the number of furry little chicks in the coop had grown from 3 to 5. This hatching speed. A look of joy quickly appeared on Chun Dao's face. The hatching speed of the yellow-feathered chicken was indeed too encouraging. Chun Dao finally confirmed one thing. The hatching period of the yellow-feathered chicken eggs was indeed 5 days. At this hatching rate, it won't be long before our house is overrun with chickens. When Chun Dao was feeling happy, Xiaohei came running over with a giggle and touched Chun Dao's calf with the feathers on his neck. You foodie chicken. Chun Dao smiled and sprinkled sorghum and rice husks on the side of the chicken coop, letting Xiaohei and the chickens in the cage peck at them. Then Chun Dao reached into the chicken coop and took out 3 eggs. It looks like these 3 eggs won't hatch. Chun Dao looked carefully at the 3 eggs in his hand. One of the 3 eggs was put in for incubation on the first day, and the other 2 were put in on the second day. The eggs in the same batch have all been successfully hatched, but these 3 eggs have not moved at all, which means that these 2 eggs are either unfertilized eggs or the product of hatching failure. Just in time for an extra meal this morning. Chun Dao brought eggs to the kitchen and said to Li Ping, Mom, crack these 3 eggs into the rice. Let's give Chun Sheng and the others a snack today. Li Ping and He Zuolian were preparing meals for Chun Sheng and his 4 companions in the kitchen. After all, they needed help to escort them into the city, and Chun Dao felt embarrassed not to provide them with a meal. Ugh! Li Ping took the eggs, broke 3 eggs, put them into the pot, and stirred them together with the sorghum paste. Chun Dao didn't stay in the kitchen for long. He went to the yard and opened the door of Chen's house. You guys came so early? As soon as the door opened, Chun Dao saw Chun Sheng and the other 4 people waiting outside, and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Aren't we afraid of delaying your business, Brother Dao? Chun Sheng scratched his head. Come in first. Chun Dao let the 5 people into the yard. As he led them into the house, he said with a smile, You are blessed today. Not only do we have rice to eat, but we also have eggs. Egg. The eyes of the 3 Chun Sheng brothers, Chun Si and Chun Jiang, all lit up. For the 3 Chun Sheng brothers, sorghum noodles were a rare food. As for eggs, the 3 brothers had not tasted eggs for at least a few years. Although Chun Si and Chun Jiang were not as miserable as Chun Sheng and the other 2, eggs were also a rare food for them, so they were naturally looking forward to it. That's right. Chun Dao nodded and said, I beat 3 eggs into the meal today. It's not much, but it's enough for you to taste. Very good. Chun Shi shouted happily, and the other 4 also looked expectant. As they looked on expectantly, Li Ping and He Zuolian also prepared the meal and brought over a large wooden barrel filled with porridge. There really are eggs. Chun Mu had excellent eyesight, and he immediately noticed that the porridge was different from usual and even smelled the unique fragrance of eggs. Auntie, give me a bowl of egg rice. Chun Jiang, who was quite familiar with Mr. Chun, couldn't wait to speak. Good. He Zuolian smiled and took out a bowl. scooping a full bowl of rice porridge for Chunjiang. Sniffing the aroma of eggs wafting from the porridge, Chunjiang couldn't help but look intoxicated. Fragrant, so fragrant. Chen Dao opened his mouth, speechless. In his opinion, this rice porridge was no different from what he had eaten a few days ago. 3 eggs were beaten into it. Although it was not as outrageous as beating an egg into the Yangtze River, there was still more rice than eggs. There was not much trace of eggs at all. How could Chunjiang show such an expression? In fact, not only Chunjiang, but also Chunsheng and others were sniffing the aroma of the food in the bowl with intoxicated faces, as if they could really smell the scent of eggs from it. "Mom, give me a bowl too." The appearance of Chunsheng and the other two aroused Chun Dao's curiosity. He asked Li Ping for a bowl of porridge, and then poured the porridge into his mouth. As soon as the rice entered his mouth, Chun Dao's eyes widened and a mask of pain appeared on his face. To be fair, this rice porridge is not that bad to eat, but don't forget that it contains rice bran. Rice bran can be swallowed after being ground into powder, but rice bran that is not ground into powder will really get stuck in the throat. "Mom, pour me a glass of water." "Here I come." Li Ping also noticed Chun Dao's expression as he had the food stuck in his throat, and hurriedly poured him a glass of water so that he could swallow the food stuck in his throat. Cough, cough, cough. Chun Dao coughed several times before he felt a little better. The others smiled. In their opinion, Chun Dao was a capable and precocious child, and they rarely saw him like this. "You guys eat first. I'll go take a look outside." After having his throat choked, Chun Dao completely lost interest in tasting the porridge. He walked out of the house, came to the chicken coop, took out 2 yellow-feathered hens from the cage, tied their feet, and planned to take them to the city to sell them. Soon after, Chun Sheng and others came out after finishing their meal. At the same time, Chunda also borrowed a donkey cart from the village chief's house. The group got on the cart, and Chun Si drove the donkey cart to the county town. There has been no change on the long, official road. As donkey carts travel along the road, one can still see refugees with weather-beaten faces and numb expressions. These refugees, with their families, walk slowly but firmly towards the county town, as if that is their only hope of survival. But Qingdao knew that when these refugees arrived in the county town, they might not be greeted by disaster relief from the government, but soldiers holding knives. Well, Qingdao sighed lightly, forced himself not to look at those poor refugees, and walked towards the county town with his head down. The donkey cart approached the county town, and Qingdao looked around. However, more and more refugees gathered outside the county town, and more houses were built by the refugees. An unplanned gathering place was formed outside the entire county town. The attentive Chun Dao also noticed that there were many bones exposed on the ground. Obviously, many refugees had starved to death, been killed, or been eaten during this period. The yamen runners who used to distribute porridge are gone too. Chun Dao turned his eyes, but failed to spot the government officials distributing porridge. It is obvious that the government nowadays is not even willing to do such superficial work as providing free porridge. Chapter 34. 1 or 2. Paying 10 copper coins as the entrance fee, Chun Dao and his party were able to pass the obstruction of the city guards and enter the county town. The county town was still bustling with activity, but Chun Dao didn't know if it was an illusion, but he seemed to see some sadness on the faces of passers-by. With this doubt in mind, Chun Dao sat on a donkey cart and arrived at the Fuhu boxing gym. He was the first to jump off the donkey cart and skillfully stuffed 10 copper coins into the hands of the boxing gym guard. "Brother Wei, please help me find Miss Li." The last time he came to the Fuhu boxing gym, Chun Dao already knew the guard's name, which was Wei Ge. After receiving the 10 copper coins, Wei Ge smiled at Chun Dao, then ran into the martial arts hall and called Li Ying out. "Brother Chun Dao is here again." Li Ying greeted Chun Dao with a smile on her face. As the only daughter of the owner of the Fuhu boxing gym, Li Ying was considered a person of high status in Taiping County, but she was very approachable. At least when facing Chun Dao, she always showed a warm smile. "Ms. Li," Chun Dao also greeted Li Ying with a smile, and then said, "I brought some white-feathered chickens this time. I want them all." Without waiting for Chun Dao to finish his introduction, Li Ying waved his hand and said that he wanted them all. Seeing this, Chun Dao's smile widened a bit, and he continued, "There are fewer white-feathered chickens this time. Only 3. Only 3. A hint of disappointment appeared on Li Ying's face. The taste of white-feathered chicken is still very good. As a foodie, She couldn't help but feel disappointed after hearing that there were